Hey, and welcome back to Divulgence, everybody. Great to see you guys. Today we got Adam from the Truth Desk in the house. Adam, my friend, good to see you, brother.
Good to see you guys. Always a pleasure.
And of course, we got Habsburg, Jolly West, man. What's going on, brother?
Aloha.
Yeah. So we've actually been kind of talking about this for a while to start having some chats about NASA, the moon landing, space, all that kind of stuff. So we're gonna get the ball rolling now. So I guess we'll go around the table real quick and just kind of say where we stand, some basic thoughts, and before we start jumping into topics, I guess I'll go first. So I've read a few books. And so we had Bart Sibrel on, of course, and I read his book Moon Man, which is like it's almost like a spy thriller mixed with research, which it's a great book. Just matter of figuring out what in there is what. I started, however, with "We Never Went to the Moon," Bill Casing's, which a lot of people seem to reference, and I honestly that was a really good read. Highly recommend that. And I'm still just kind of finishing off NASA Mooned America by Ralph Renee, which is also really good. Gets into a lot of different stuff than Casing and Sibrel. But yeah, they all kind of have the same general thought that the moon missions were faked. A lot of the NASA, if not all the NASA photography, is faked, edited, and the videos. And generally, NASA is just not one to be a good truth teller or one to provide authentic information. So I've done a little bit of the other side of the coin, some of the rebuttals. I was going to go a little deeper into that once I finished Renee's book. But I'm still very on the fence. I still find it very hard to believe that there's so many so many things that you can point at, which you don't want to get sucked into that being a reason on its own to believe something. But anything from looking at the technology, whether it be the quality they had then and the feats they were able to accomplish versus the quality we should have now and the feats we don't seem to be accomplishing. Of course, the footage. There's a lot of interesting reasons that I've found why that's just very sketchy. Not just because it looks really odd. Just to even little things like, well, if there's like how the I think it was Armstrong's moon photo was taken. Well, how did they take that photo if there's no one else on the moon, if there was no camera on the moon, if no one had been there? Another thing I find interesting was after, I think it was after Apollo 11, people just seem to really lose interest in the moon missions and NASA. So like all of a sudden, every subsequent Apollo mission, something went wrong, and like an astronaut or a NASA genius seemed to come in at the nick of time and solve the problem, like it was some sort of action movie. Just a lot of interesting things. The very weird behavior of a lot of the astronauts, especially the Apollo astronauts. Like some of them don't seem to want to talk about it. They don't seem to be able to talk about it. Some of the interviews that they have given a lot of contradictory statements. Just a lot of very, very odd stuff, especially for someone like myself, or I think like you two, who have taken time to, investigate conspiracies, false flags, government operations, intelligence agencies, and it just reeks of all that kind of stuff. So despite that, I say I'm still on the fence. I'd like to see more evidence leaning the other way before I can solidify my beliefs. So that's why I'd like to have some more talks with other people, and then start to do some more research on the other side of things. But yeah, it's just so interesting. But I will say, whether I think I'm right or wrong, or whether I am right or wrong, like, it is very unfortunately, some people did pass during some of these operations, from the Challenger explosion to the Apollo 1 fire. But unlike, for example, like the JFK assassination, it's not so much surrounded by a really, really violent and sad occurrence. So it's a lot more not interesting, but it's a lot more. It's kind of a fun thing to be researching. It's really there's so much out there, like we talked about before. It's like JFK or 9/11 or what have you. There's so many facets, and yeah. So I'm still on the fence. The only reason I would say I'm leaning to any side I'd say maybe I'm leaning towards everything being faked, but I'm thinking that very specific stuff has been faked up to a certain point. So yeah, I'm still have some dots that I need to fill in, but yeah, that's kind of where I said. I know that obviously NASA and the CIA are obviously heavily, and the DIA are heavily involved in these operations, and I mean we just seem to have a good idea of how good they are with the truth, and doing things morally and legitimately, and just the fact that when beating Russia comes into the equation. I think some really stupid things happen because of that, and yeah, the results I think show. So, Habsburg, you're up, buddy.
I'm one of these people, like I tend to try to be like in just about like all cases, like what I'd say is like agnostic, like about most of these issues that like legitimately I can't prove. Like there is some truth out there, right? But like how I don't know how I would ever be able to like validate the truth of any of these things. So I try to be like not dogmatic and not like rooted in any belief on one side or the other, because I think that that's like that's kind of how they get us, is like we're able to pick the narrative that we like the best and like become invested in it and say like, this is what I believe, this is what I know, I understand this to be the truth, and like hang on to that. And so I like to say that like I wouldn't say that I know anything to necessarily be the truth. I am like supremely skeptical about pretty much anything that comes to to this stuff, as regards like certainly the space program, but like even before that, when we're talking about like cosmology or cosmogony, things like this, these are things that like I can't, I, I have no capacity as like a human being sitting here like on planet Earth in the Pacific Northwest of the North American continent, being able to like validate on any personal level. So like if I look and I say, well, these people, these organizations, these establishments have like gate kept like truths for hundreds if not thousands of years, and this is the way that they've constructed our cosmology. And I'm not saying like, well, I'm not saying that, well, like because they say that there's a heliocentric spherical earth revolving around the sun, and this structure of our galaxy, of our universe, that I'm like a flat earth person. What I'm saying is like I not being able to not being able to like directly prove or disprove any of these things. I just can't like form like a genuine opinion. So I tend to be like, doubtful about most of this stuff, but not dogmatic. And I appreciate, like, there has been good work done about, NASA and the moon landings and things like that. I like Dave McGowan's wagging the moon doggy. I like everything that Dave McGowan ever did. I think that, I think that people have done their best, as far as that goes. And again, like, it's one of these things where, like, you can never know. There's plausible deniability, on either side. But yeah, I mean, it's like the moon stuff is like the goofiest stuff to me, to be honest with you. I think that, like, there's other things that, just in terms of, like, the actual, structure of, the earth and celestial objects, like how that works. Like, that's more confounding because, it's so fundamental, and, we're not, we're not given any alternative models or anything like this. And, so, uh, at that point, I think that there are bigger questions too, that are relevant, when it comes to, I think that, and hopefully we'll get into it, but it's not just about, like, did they fake the moon landing or not, but, like, hey, how did, what is the moon? Where is the moon? Where is Earth in relation to these other objects? Like, how does all this stuff work, and what is it really? And that's, that's kind of my take. I don't, me being the kind of person that if I can't experience it, directly, see it directly, I can't take anything as a truth, or for granted. So that's, you know what I mean? If that makes sense.
Yeah, man. For sure.
For sure.
Okay, man. All right, Adam, shoot us.
So I started out believing in a fake moon landing. There were, and I was thinking about this the other day. There used to be these, like, documentaries on mainstream television, like Fox, Discovery, History Channel, where they would go over some of this stuff. And I remember watching those as a kid, talking about mid 2000s. And so I believed in a fake moon landing until about a year ago, when I made a video on my channel, fact checking a conversation between Joe Rogan and Matt Walsh. And when I started to do research for that and fact check Rogan's claims, the stuff that I was getting back was like, well, it made me actually believe in a real moon landing. Some things people talk about is humans not being able to leave the Van Allen radiations belt, or that no
Right.
biologics have left the Van Allen's radiation belt, which is actually false, because before that Apollo mission, there was a mission called Zon 5 that the Soviets did, where they actually sent, like, fruit flies and some other, I don't know, they're called extremophiles, but the things that can tolerate high radiation. They sent them through the Van Allen belts. Nice. Was that the original paper?
Yeah. Globe and Mail, baby.
Nice. And so, there is ways that you can get around the Van Allen belts. They're very thin up by the poles, and they're thick towards the middle of the globe. So what they do is they just kind of skirt around it at the poles. And then you look at what would actually go into faking it, because the rocket actually did launch, and people tracked it. Amateur astronomers tracked it. Other governments tracked it. And it went to the moon, and it's still up there, and we can see pictures of it up there. And then people also tracked the communications between the rocket and mission control. They weren't encrypted. Even amateur ham radio operators could track the communication. So what would actually go into faking this, if you think it was faked, was they launched the rocket, it went to the moon, and it had a pre-recorded voice and video on board, and mission control would have had to have been talking to this pre-recorded message, because that's the only way you could fake that communication line from the rocket back to Earth. And that gets pretty unbelievable, because now everything has to be timed out. Like they hit play on the tape recorder, and then it's like they have to know down to the fucking second when Buzz is going to say this, when Neil is going to say this. The tape of the moon landing would be coming back to Earth, all pre-recorded from this from the Apollo 11 satellite. So, and then they collected moon rocks. I know some of like they gave some moon rocks to a diplomat, turned out to be fake, but there's still like there's still a bunch of them. Like there's like 200 pounds or 200 tons. I should have wrote that down, but there's a lot of moon rocks that are real that came from these missions. And so it's like, and they also, you can see the buggy tracks. You can see the buggy tracks in the Apollo in the moon dust and the footprints of the astronauts. So it's like now you're talking about not only pre-recorded video and audio, but
where can you see those?
oh, there's here. I can let me.
I'll
I'll present it here.
You were first you're talking about the Russians sending the fruit flies up, and then when you were talking about the communications with the rocket, are you talking about the Apollo 11? Is that what you were talking about, Apollo 11, or one of the Apollo missions?
I mean, any of them, because like I said, people tracked that communication and saw that it was coming from the rocket. So the Apollo rocket would send something back to mission control, and they would say something and send it back, and people tracked that communication. It wasn't. But
it's not necessarily a rocket on the moon. I mean, it's going back and forth between the command center and some object, but that doesn't mean that it was on the moon.
So I finally got it to go. So here's the pictures that they've taken of.
Oh yeah, sorry, Adam. When I noticed you threw it up there twice. I have to be the one to throw it up there. That's why it didn't work at first.
Okay.
Yeah, just so you know.
So yeah, these are pictures. I think these were taken by either by NASA, but there's other ones that have been taken by the South Koreans, by the Japanese, by all different kinds of governments that show the lunar landers of all the Apollo missions and all the lunar tracks. So, and even like amateur astronomers can point their telescopes up at the moon and see this stuff. So it's like something actually went there. And to make those buggy tracks, like now you're talking about a robot, like 1960s technology. You're talking about a robot going around and collecting stuff and they placed experiments. They placed a solar
wind. Easier than going to the fucking moon, man.
So I mean, what you're saying?
1969, though. I mean,
yeah.
But your claim is that like with just like a lay, person's technology, something that I can like buy in a store off of a catalog on the internet, I can see the tracks of the rover on the moon.
I don't know if it would probably be a pretty powerful telescope, but
but in other words, like there has to be some like government interlocutor, whether it be NASA or some other government on Earth or the Vatican and their telescopic facilities or something like that, right? They're like a just regular citizen, even one with like a considerable amount of resources could not purchase a telescope on Earth that they could like stand on their property and see these tracks on the moon, right?
Probably not the tracks. You might be able to see the actual lunar modules, but I don't. The tracks is new. The tracks just came around in the last 10 to 15 years where they got stuff that was powerful enough to see that.
And the other thing about anything that comes in the last 10 or 15 years, then, there has to be like some degree of skepticism of, what has been, computer generated. And I mean, that's just where I come from in terms of like my degree of skepticism of, being able to like, accept, like any visual evidence.
And I haven't, and another thing with it being newer, because one of the big things was, which seems to be a very, very classic with this whole NASA thing, where if there's scrutiny or criticism to a certain thing, NASA or these NASA apologists, they seem to come up with something to counter it. So I remember how before, I don't know when, but in the past, it was a big thing like, why can't we see the tracks? Why can't we see the rover? And now you're saying, okay, relatively new somewhat, now we can. So it's nice to see that NASA has plugged that hole. It being, I'd like to know who else took these photos other than just NASA or NASA paid or CIA paid people, because It'd be good to know what companies and or countries were involved in that, because I think it's worth saying that just because another country says it doesn't necessarily make it true. Let's just kind of throw out that, not that it is Israel, but let's just say it's Israel trying to tell us that these are photos they took. I mean, I just don't think people are going to believe that.
Well,
So
that's a whole nother level of conspiracy to think that, because I think some of them come from South Korea, some come from Japan, Russia. I mean, you're talking about like a huge amount of collusion there to have,
yeah,
which I mean,
I am.
I'm open to, I suppose, but like these government, like, even the Soviets in the the Cold War days, if they had proof like this, they could have blown the lid on this whole thing. I mean, not every government has the US's back. I just, like I
No,
said though,
no.
when you and then this stuff too though, like as technology would progress, amateurs will eventually have the capability to see the lunar surface and see these tracks. I mean, if you think the moon landing was faked, then eventually it's going to come to light. And I think that might have been one of the considerations for not faking it, because they would have known eventually this is going to come out and it's just going to be a huge embarrassment to us.
Well,
I don't
know?
think they
I've got
foresaw large screen TVs, dude. With how shitty that fucking footage is, I don't know if they foresaw that people were going to get good enough TVs to look. Because at that time, you couldn't get a big TV even if you had $1 billion fucking dollars to spend. Right? You couldn't get a big TV. You just couldn't. They weren't there. And you can get like a what was it? Some sort of adapter or something you put on the screen to make things look bigger. But that's not going to help in this case. So. I think that footage is a big thing too. So
I have a point there,
go ahead.
to what Adam was saying about how these are like disparate, state governments and agencies that are all confirming the same thing. I mean, I think that one of the things that should be thought of when we talk about that is if all of these and not just necessarily that they're all like colluding with the United States, because the United States is like the arbiter of these things, but like let's say that that there are certain agendas that are going to be like future facing, that regard like extraterrestrial beings, narratives about like creatures, UAPs, extra terrestrial intelligences, things like this. Like it would it would be like necessitate potentially like a very deep collusion, or like agreement on the parts of like lots of or if not like universally, all of these powers that be, to be able to like maintain that kind of narrative. And that like if potentially this is like important for establishing, there are these places we can get to them, they can get to us, this is how this works, then then this is an important point for them to agree on. Just throwing that out there, that like maybe a lot of this has to do with like seeding those kinds of narratives about
and it's also possible, just to add on to that, it's also possible that maybe they're not colluding with the United States per se. They could be colluding with the CIA, which sometimes is not necessarily the same thing, because sometimes they just have their own agenda, and it just falls in line.
And that there are things like beyond like the CIA, beyond governments, that there are like powerful entities, secret societies, things like this that predate all of any of the modern nation states, or any of the modern intelligent agencies, things that have been going on for hundreds if not thousands of years. So.
Sure. I can totally appreciate that. I think people in power and people that have a lot of money and power have always colluded with each other to try to get more wealth and more power. It's just kind of the drive of a sick soul to just continue to seek more materialistic things. And so and we do still see stuff like that go on in the open. World Economic Forum, Bilderberg. I mean, there is collusion at the top levels to shape certain things. I think it's just my opinion here, pure spec. It's just more nuanced than let's fake this huge thing. Let's get thousands of astronomers around the world to all somehow fall in line with us. I mean, there was 400,000 people that worked on all 6 Apollo projects, right? And so, the population of the US was 114 million or 15 million. So you're talking about a decent chunk of the US population involved in the Apollo program. And then if it was fake,
Did they know?
why keep going back? Why do it 5 more fucking times? I mean, just do it once and be like, all right, we did it, no more. Why do it 5 more times?
Well, I almost think that doing it over and over again is more evidence of like, them like having to compress that narrative and being like, oh, see, we really did do it. But what you said, like thousands of astronomers. Well, like who are astronomers? They're not. They're. I mean, what astronomers aren't working for some kind of like university or like a government agency? I mean, they're not like private astronomy companies. Like these are people that are like funded and operating on the behalf of like governments or university institutions that like are cooperating with governments. Who is an astronomer? You know what I mean? Like,
I could see that. I think that if you did have something like that, though, there'd be whistleblowers. I mean, these astronomers are just, they're not intelligence guys; they're nerds, and they'd be coming on podcasts and news talking about, this cover up. No one from inside of NASA has come out and given evidence of this moon landing hoax. None of these 400,000 people, these engineers, none of them. You mentioned Bill Casing. Bill Casing was the first, huh?
Many have died, and there actually, I know of one occurrence of a gentleman who seems like he was very well on his way to be a whistleblower. I'll have to find his name for you while you're talking. And he well, here I can find it real easy. He died in the Apollo 1 fire.
Yeah.
He seemed to be catching on that NASA was slacking. People were just drinking on the job. They weren't working hard enough to make what seemed to be this impossible deadline. Gus Grissom. Yeah. And
he was one of the astronauts, wasn't he?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he died in the Apollo 1 fire. He was one of the 3 guys who died. Yeah. So, and it just goes to this, another point is that a lot of these people, they might not know that they're working towards this fraud. They're just focused on their project for the most part, right? And then for the product, the final product, for the most part, they just see what we're seeing. If not, they are a little closer to the action, so they're just fucking buying it even more, in my opinion, unless they're in some position to see something that is wrong and off, like I believe Grissom did, and then he died. I just don't think they're gonna be noticing this stuff, and I know that's
compartmentalization. That's
yes,
what
exactly.
You're saying. I mean, it's like when you do have that many people, like it's almost easier to
it is almost easier
to kind of pigeonhole them into like their own segment of the project.
Because if it's only like 10
nobody's
of you, then you would have like regular. You'd think like, okay, let's all 10 of us have to be meeting together and updating each other. But it's thousands and thousands of people. So like you said, they're all compartmentalized and off in their own camps. Putting this.
I mean, but to say that the rocket launched and it didn't go to the moon, and that these pictures of the Apollo sites are fake, and they filmed it in a film studio, and then they did all this trickery. I mean, yes, people aren't going to be privy to the full extent of the plot, but like everyone that is working in their own compartment is going to know this part of it was faked. Hey, I was an engineer, and I know that the rocket didn't have enough fuel to leave low Earth orbit. And I know that rocket's, I mean, there would have been thousands of people that would have been working on that rocket being in Earth orbit or whatever. So it's like, there's not a Bob Lazar level whistleblower come out and say, this is what I did. This was my part in faking it. There's people like Bart Sibrel, which he's done a lot of, he's done a lot of digging and a lot of investigation, but I mean, he wasn't a NASA employee. He's just someone like us that researches stuff. So it's like there's no Bob Lazar of the moon landing, if that makes any sense.
But also, like, at this point, I mean, how many of the people that even
Casing?
worked like actually worked on the project
he's pretty close to that. I mean, he worked at
so Casing worked for Rocketdyne from 1956 to 1963, and he was like the first high level guy to come out, but he didn't work for NASA, and he quit 6 years before the moon mission, working at an independent contractor. So it's like,
by the way, who also worked for Rocketdyne was Owsley Stanley, who was, the guy who was making all of the underground LSD that supplied the whole entire like 1960s counterculture. He worked.
That's cool.
Owsley Stanley, who he was like basically like the sound engineer for the Grateful Dead, and like made all of the Owsley acid. He worked at Rocketdyne. He also worked at Jet Propulsion Laboratory. This is really like very interesting things. And then Buzz Aldrin, of course, like the Apollo astronaut, the second man to walk on the moon, the 33rd degree Freemason, was like at Alexander Shulgin's Friday night dinners at his, house. We talked about Alexander Shulgin on the show, recently that we did, but, who worked for Dow Chemical, who was Owsley Stanley's mentor, who, created almost every like psychedelic drug that we know, like it's really interesting that there's so much like crossover between these people that were like actually manufacturing and engineering these psychedelic drugs and these space agencies and like astronauts and things like that. I don't know. So there's something going on with that too. So just mentioning that since you brought up Rocketdyne.
No, that's
but
cool.
Yeah, Owsley Stanley was an employee there, and that their facility that he worked at was like, I want to say maybe at the Santa Susana Pass in east of Los Angeles, like about 11 miles from the Spawn Ranch where the Manson family was
nice.
staying.
Also, on the case of like you're saying there's no whistleblowers, I think it's worth noting that they could have just had a really good HR bribery department, whistleblower, anti-whistleblower department. Like they had a fuck ton of money, man. Like a rover that looks like it should have cost like a few $100s, if not maybe a few thousand at most. They were charging $12 million of that value money that time. Okay. And how many test rovers and all that did they have to go through before it's like, okay, we got this rover? So I imagine how many millions of dollars just for the rover. Okay. So I'm sure they have money to be buying people off and getting people to change their mind about things, like this classic case with Mr. Werner von Braun. He originally said to get to the moon, we would need 3 rockets the size of the Empire State Building with the weight of about 10 times the Queen Mary. He changed that very quickly. What was used was the Saturn V rocket, which weighed 2,500 tons as opposed to the 800,000 tons that was originally said. That's a difference of 32,000%. The rocket was 360 feet as opposed to the 1,250 feet that was originally thought to be required. And only 1 rocket was used as opposed to the 3 that was supposed to be required. So things like that, even though it's just numbers or whatever, like that's very concerning.
It is.
And obviously he's a fucking Nazi. So he's already bought off. He's already happy that he hasn't had his throat slit or anything like that. So
he
he's got
wasn't just
no.
a Nazi, dude. He was like a
Oh, you're
fully
goddamn right, man. He's
I
a
mean, he
fucking
was a
evil
fully
fucking
initiated
person.
SS. Well, you know,
SS
I mean,
motherfucker,
yeah, you're
man.
talking about the SS, and you know, you're talking
Yeah.
about like a very, you know, like mystical occult, you know, order that you know
Mm-hmm.
is into like things. You know, when we're talking about like alchemy, you know, social alchemy, social engineering, you know, things that you know they had you know like these ideations about you know like you know turning like changing the world and it's in their image like so you know I think that it's more than just like he wasn't just like a member of the Nazi party,
Sure.
you know.
SS
um
were hardcore. It, you know, something, shout out Nazis here. I'm just kidding. But I mean, no, like there is a real thing of like the rocket technology that we have today is like directly descended from these people from Nazi Germany. It's like they were the pinnacle of
Yeah, dude, the
engineering. I
V2
mean,
program.
the you
It
look
all
at
came from
everything
Paperclip.
you look at the amount of ingenuity that the Nazis had, like everything they had was better. The Tiger tank was better than the Sherman tank. The assault rifle that they developed, the intercontinental ballistic missile. I mean, we didn't even barely have a concept of an intercontinental ballistic missile, and these Nazis were close to developing it. So it's like and the Russian rocket technology, because the Russians got a bunch of scientists from their version of Paperclip,
Right.
like the rocket that the Russians use today in their missiles and their it's like directly descended from these original Nazi designs. And you know, von Braun, like you mentioned, it is interesting that so many of the people that truly understood rocketry in the early days were all Nazis, all SS. And even today, people can't,
Yeah.
like Jeff Bezos, his rocket just fucking exploded. You know, Musk had how many explosions when he first started? Like rocket technology is super super hard, and there's Elon Musk has said there's maybe 20 people in the entire planet that truly understand rocketry and can like engineer a rocket. And he actually, you know, if you I don't know how you guys feel about Musk, but he became chief engineer of his own rocket and developed it. So it's like this, you know, rockets are complicated. Now, Jordan, to your point of the original design was, you know, 3 Empire State Buildings. And I know that there's a problem with space travel that basically the amount of fuel that you need to leave Earth orbit, you start adding more fuel and then you add more weight to the rocket. And so then you have to add more fuel to compensate for that weight. And it just becomes this thing where you're constantly adding more fuel. And
Right.
it's like Earth's gravity is set. Like if we just had a little bit more gravity here on Earth, we basically wouldn't be able to escape Earth orbit without like exploding ourselves off the face of the planet. Like traditional rocketry wouldn't work if our gravity was more intense than it is. So it is very difficult to leave. I don't know if when von Braun first said that, was he talking about like the conventional fuels that they had at the time? And then I know they developed like solid fuel. I don't know much about rocketry, but
uh,
did they have like
it
advancements in the fuel that allowed them to, you
which
know,
It
it
was
should be
pretty close
pointed
to
out
the
too
time.
that
It was a few years away from launching. I'm pretty sure it was pretty close to launch. I'd have to look into that, but it was
as
a pretty quick flip flop.
as regards the fuel, I mean, it should also be noted like who you know invented basically like you know jet rocket
Yes,
fuel. You know, I
yes.
mean, we need to
Thank
talk
you.
about Jack Parsons and JPL, and you know, I mean, this was Aleister Crowley's like top you know disciple like acolyte you know and so you know what like how is it that like all of these people that were involved in like these you know dark mystical arts were the ones who are you know you know so deeply involved in you know shaping like our understanding of these you know technologies or you know inventing the components of these technologies and you know I mean Jack Parsons, you know, as you probably know, like started the you know Agape Lodge of the Ordo Templi Orientis in Pasadena. I mean, that's where JPL is based out of, Pasadena. I mean, I don't know. I mean, these are these are things that I like have to you know wonder like how much of this stuff is like these kind of like mystical, occult workings, and
Mm.
sort of like psyop mind control stuff, and how much of it is like real science. And
Well,
like,
that's a really good point, because there's so many great thinkers in history that have said that their ideas don't come from them, that they think they're tapping into something, some sort of universal consciousness. Aleister Crowley, like you mentioned, one podcast I was watching, Habsburg, where he channeled this alien. He drew a gray alien, and
it's called Lamb,
yeah,
LAM.
lamb, yeah. And so it's like, and there's these stories all over the place of entities, that we don't really understand, that maybe are in another dimension or something, kind of imparting ideas onto humans, for good or for bad. Albert Einstein very famously used to to come up with relativity. He had like two metal balls in his hand and a pie tin underneath, and he would like almost go to sleep, and then the balls would drop
Mhm.
and they would make a clank noise, wake him up,
Finally.
and he would be in this semi-conscious state the entire time when he was coming up with relativity and time dilation. And so I think there is something into people tapping into something that's not just their own thought process when they come up with these things. That's a great point.
Well, and I think that this is kind of in this is sort of like something that I sort of am still trying to like wrap my mind around, as regards this, like, it is as to whether or not like space is what we think of space as, or if it is like, these other dimensions, and what we're seeing isn't necessarily like physical places that we like actually can get to or not, or like, what's out there, these entities or aliens or extraterrestrials, are like corporeal, things that exist in a physical space, or if it's like, from another dimension. And if that's the case, then it's not really that, like traveling through space to get to a location. It's more like what we're creating, with these technological interfaces, where we're actually able to get, penetrate other dimensions, and have other dimensions like, penetrate into ours through these interfaces, these like computers and things like that. Like, maybe that's the real space, travel. I don't know.
Mm.
Just, um,
Um,
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I, those, other galaxies and stuff, they might as well be non-existent, because we can't, the distance is so vast that, you know,
That's it, exactly. Yeah, I mean, again, like, there are these things that are, so complex. It's so big, and we are sitting here, like, with, like you said, with gravity, with our feet on the ground, looking up, and we have to like basically take the word of like people that are like higher levels of initiated than we are, to say that, well, this is what is really out there, this is how far everything is, this is why this makes sense, because we've like come up with these hypotheses, and based off of these, other hypotheses, based off of these other hypotheses, and each one is, like a self fulfillment of, its own hypothesis, and so on and so forth, and so they all build off of each other, and you're like, okay, we take that for granted because we're taught that in school, and um,
yeah. Well,
but with our feet on the ground, you and I like can't, we can't vet that out,
I was just thinking about this yesterday, how it's so crazy we spend so much money on defense and military, not only in this country but in all other countries. Money spent on defense and military to, blow each other up. And then like the companies of the world are just trying to sell you, Reese's peanut butter cups and Coca-Cola and McDonald's. It's like
and
we could
garbage
be
shit.
doing so much as a species to really
Yeah.
unlock the mysteries of the universe and our own consciousness. There's so many things about our consciousness that we don't understand, like remote viewing. How the hell does remote viewing work? Why does it work? These nonverbal autistic kids that can communicate with each other, and there's so many things that we just don't understand, and that there's more under the surface. And you talk about secret societies or masons or whoever. It's like, a lot of people think that they do have this esoteric knowledge, they do have this knowledge of how consciousness really works. And you know, a lot of it's kind of like a manifestation kind of thing. You create your own reality, the alchemy of the soul, as within, so without. It's like there's a lot there, but I feel like a lot of that is repressed. A lot of that is, let's not talk about it. Let's just focus on whatever mainstream science is. You know, we see people involved in mainstream science like fucking Jeffrey Epstein, who knew
Yep.
every theoretical physicist, who had summits. So it's like, what the hell is that? Why is this guy this intelligence peddler? You know, he's not even an intelligence asset. He's an intelligence peddler. I've come to the conclusion, like, he goes around collecting intel on things and blackmailing people and selling it. So it's like, that's what the state of our sciences is right now. There's so much we could know, but I really do feel like it's repressed.
Well, so then I mean that's a really good point, Adam, and I would share that to what you were saying before. Like, if if this thing, if whatever was fake, blah blah was fake, like this guy would have come out, this guy would have come out. Well, like, not if they're compromised, like how many of the people, like what you, I mean, not even bought, but like, what are other ways, to like ensure somebody's cooperation?
That's what I mean.
Like what Adam just said. I mean, the degree that, we've been, able to like, see like Jeffrey Epstein's influence. Well, there are other Jeffrey Epsteins, and and it was easier to like, control people, in these times before, where like, if you had like a piece of information on somebody, it was like way more taboo than, what our social mores are now, like in other words, like way less, of like a, a compromise would constitute like a, a bigger, like a piece of blackmail. Like if some guy was like gay in today's day and age, like nobody cares about that. But let's say like, you found out like a guy was gay or had some kind of like, just like plain, I mean, gay is pretty vanilla nowadays. You know what I mean? Like nobody would be like, "Wow, you have hardcore blackmail on me because you found out that I had a relationship with a guy in my college days." But like back then,
Depends on who
like,
you are. Look
well,
at
yeah,
Lindsey Graham.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
It's June. Come on, Lindsey Graham. It's time to just come out with it. Be who you are. Come on.
No, that
No,
if there ever was
you
a
see,
poster boy for,
you see what I'm
sorry.
saying? What constituted blackmail, 60 years ago, is different than, what it is now. Like it was way easier to, have like compromise on people at that point.
Well, and I think it was really easy to control information for the longest time. I think the first time I came on Divulgence, me and Jordan talked about this, like, like the before think about before the printing press. Most people were fucking illiterate. They didn't read, like, there's no way to get information. You just work the land like your father did and like your children are going to, and then the printing press comes around. And even that, like, if you look at 100 years ago, like, who's starting their own paper? Like, if we wanted to have this kind of discussion, we gonna write a paper about it and print it out and go around on the street handing it out to people? Like, now you can just put something up online and it gets, you can get hundreds of views, thousands of views, millions. And it's like, there's more information. And I think a lot of these secrets are being exposed. But on top of that, you also have a lot of misinformation. I mean, true misinformation, where it's put out by these intel agencies to mask what's really going on. And I'll bring it back to the moon landing here, where you can say some of the stuff like the doctored photos from NASA, or why are the astronauts acting this way? There could be other things. Like, they could have seen something when they were looking out the window. They could have seen an alien spaceship. We could be, who knows? There's all kinds of things we could get into with that, like the photos being doctored. I mean, it just came out in the recent UAP drop. One of the Apollo missions, there was 3 blue dots, like 3 UFOs up in the background. So it's like there could be other reasons why photos are edited, or why astronauts were told to be quiet about something other than a fake moon landing. And it could be bundled into a fake moon landing to say everyone that thinks that NASA's photos are doctored, everyone that talks about NASA is talking about a fake moon landing. So pay no attention to this type thing. Same thing. I think that's the case with people that think the twin towers on 9/11 were melted with a laser. It's to get people away from talking about what really happened, and instead let's focus on a fucking directed energy weapon, you know.
Yeah,
No, it's a good point. And to
true.
the degree of like, what you were saying before, you're like, yeah, anybody can write anything and, disseminate information at, the push of a button now. But like how does anything really go viral? I mean, you have these like algorithmic, gatekeeping, I mean, something beyond just like, the like natural inclination of anybody to look at anything is determining what you look at and what you don't look at and what becomes like something viral that everybody looks at the same time. I mean, it's like
Mm.
it's these algorithms that are in, I mean, it's not the actual things that we write when we push the buttons. Like, I can say anything and nobody gives a shit about what I say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, these social media algorithms, there's definitely the social engineering ability of, like the YouTube algorithm or Facebook or Instagram or whatever is really, really high. I think about that a lot for everything, election interference or narrative spinning or whatever. Just look at the Hunter Biden laptop. I mean,
I mean, at all of it. I mean, just anything, and it's so weird, too. Like, and I would love for us three. This would be like a really good conversation for us to have at some point about like this, algorithmic engineering and like what goes viral and why. Like that would be an awesome topic for us to have like a deep dive like discussion on. But yeah, I mean, I think that like at the end of the day, you make a good point. Like it's not necessarily like it was fake or it was not fake. There are potentially like any number of things that could be going on, that there were, things on the moon or things have, been there, or, who knows. That's why I say like I try to be like pretty like agnostic and not have like a dogma about like it was this or it was that.
yeah.
To me it doesn't
That's a
like
good thing.
to me it doesn't add up, like what we're told. And that could be for any, number of reasons.
Yeah, another great example of that is, in my opinion, flat Earth, where, you have certain
Yes.
things that are like the fact that we can't go to Antarctica. Nobody can. That it's so heavily controlled and regulated that satellite images are scrubbed of it. And it's like, okay, so now we have this theory of flat Earth, and it's like everyone that talks about the odd things about Antarctica, like that's where you go right to flat Earth. And it's like, well, okay, like the Earth doesn't have to be flat for there to be something weird going on with
Mhm.
Antarctica. There could be some sort of military installation or DARPA or weather modification, or even deeper, you could say there's a UFO base there, whatever. Like there's all kinds of things you could say besides ice wall, flat Earth, and all this stuff. But that Antarctica shit is bundled in with flat Earth, so nobody, if you talk about it, you seem kooky
Yeah.
because
It's shit coding. Like,
shit coding. Yes.
yeah, shit coding. And that's like,
Cheat
yeah,
coding.
and
Yeah.
that's a really like effective tactic for propaganda, right? For like where, controlling narrative is like, well, to direct people, and like with influence, and like with influencers that have been, selected, and say like, well, when this topic comes up, we're going to frame it in this way, so it's either you can talk about it this way or you can talk about it this way. And that's like a dialectic framing, instead of being like, well, we can have like, on a spectrum of different conversations or different concepts or different ideas. Like, it's directing the narrative into like it's this or it's that. Earth is flat or it's round. Not
Mm.
like it's not like, well, there's so many different ways that you could like interpret like what is this area that we live on and in. Like, who knows? But when you're like, well, it's either flat or round, that means it's like this or that, and everything else is like meant to direct you into one of those kind of like polarities.
Yeah. Yeah, we see the same thing with politics. Everyone gets pigeonholed into one side or the other, and it's like
Big time. Big
people
time.
people are really bad about it, where it's like, this is my belief, and like they'll adopt everything. Like Democrats will adopt every Democrat talking point. Republicans will do this. And now granted,
I fucking hate
25,
that, man.
30% of the country is galvanized one way or the other. There's a lot of people in the middle, but that is a really what you're talking about, Habsburg, a really toxic thing that we do is just like, nope, this is my beliefs, and everyone on the other side is wrong, and it.
And to the degree now this is and it, another point about that is not you're like yeah there in reality there are a lot of people that are in the middle of all this stuff but giving us the impression that everybody is on one side or the other. It's not just about like people actually being on one side or the other, but it's like giving us this like managed impression that people are completely on one side or the other too.
Yeah.
And then you're like, if everybody's on one side or the other, like I better pick a side.
Yeah.
Like where our natural inclination is not necessarily to do that. you know
Yeah. I think it's getting better with the rise of social media and people not getting their information from the mainstream, because the mainstream media is really bad about pigeonholing people. And, we talked last time I was on, I think it was, we talked about the, 2008 post financial crisis, where you had, the Tea Party and you had the 1% movement both rising up saying, let's do something. And then all of a sudden we get all these social issues come into the fray to fight about gay rights and transgenderism and, all this bullshit social stuff that we argue about that distracted us from, what we were all really pissed off about post 2008. And
It's like
it's
the
really
Epstein
bad
file.
with the influencers. Habsburg, you hit it on the head with MAGA influencers will get marching orders, and it's like you can pull 20 of them and see their tweets, and they all say the exact same thing. Like there's one where they're all calling Candace Owens evil right when she dropped a new episode, and it's like, well, that's definitely inorganic. You can't have all of these people saying the same thing. There was one with senators where they would say shit that didn't happen for 10 million or whatever. I don't know if you remember that clip where they clipped Donald Trump saying something, and then
Oh,
like
okay, I think so.
20 senators reacted the exact same way, where they said shit that didn't happen for two. So it's like we can see like blatant social media coordination there.
and yeah, and to the degree you're like, well, I think that it's potentially like less polarizing in a world with social media versus like more traditional where you only had this many amount of channels or this many newspapers. But in a way, like it's so much more effective with the propaganda now because they can like target you and based on like what you look at, say like, all right, I'm scrolling through my feed, this is what I stopped and like read for 3 seconds longer than this thing that I scrolled through, right? And the algorithm's going to say, okay, these words or this person, like keyed this response in his brain where he paused for that much longer, gave it that much more attention. We are going to direct this kind of, like target this individual with this type of propaganda. And it's like that much more effective. And so it's like, yeah, you have like, this guy versus this guy, but then it's really like the battlefield is in each one of our own minds. When
Yeah.
we're each one of us being targeted and like being given well, we're being exactly we're being given like our own like specific influencers, and like
That's a
we're
good
being
point.
given our own like personal paradigms, each one of us through these technologies. So it's like you can see, oh, this guy's bullshit, that guy's bullshit, but like it's hard to see when we really are like sold something that we already agree with and using our own like personal biases and perspectives that we are invested in already that reinforce that that
Yeah.
we're getting targeted by that, right?
Yeah, and
True,
people that
man.
are really
Yeah.
galvanized in their politics, they do end up in an echo chamber on social media, where it's like all they see is positives from their party, all they see is mocking of the other party, and then they think, how could anyone be a Republican? How could anyone be a Democrat? Like, and they think that everyone in the world is thinking like them, and the other side is just idiots. That's a huge problem with social media, the echo chamber.
True, and to the degree that like even like the you have the echo chamber, then you have like the dissidents, and like it's so easy to manufacture that the dissident voice too, and insert that, and people are like, yeah, because I know that it's so obvious. I've been sold a bill of goods by this guy or by that guy, but this guy who's saying something different than X or Y, even if they're trying to like push you into this other manufactured kind of narrative, you know what I mean? Like it doesn't appear obvious because you're like, oh, that person's a dissident against this guy and this guy on those two sides, but creating like the next level of dialectic. It's always this problem reaction solution that's been predetermined, this Hegelian dialectic. And I think that that's what so much of this is. So.
Yeah.
Again, I think that this is, I mean, and I don't want to get like too far afield because, I know that we're, we keep trying to talk about like the space and the aliens and all this stuff. And every time we do, we like get derailed by like other really great, conversation topics because the three of us are like, good at just talking. And, but I think that's a good conversation that we should like hone in on another time, is like how we get like, influenced and, algorithmically, control.
Yeah, for sure, man. That's a good idea too. Yeah. Next time we should just not pick a topic. Maybe try that.
That's what I said. I think that we should do just like these like free form conversations sometimes between the three of us, because like it just it ends up being fun.
It does, yeah.
Adam, what are your thoughts on what you could consider like NASA bloopers? Like here's a good one for you. Let's I don't know if you've seen this one. Let's pull this one up.
We are headed 3,600 miles above Earth, 15 times higher from the planet than the International Space Station. As we get further away from Earth, we'll pass through the Van Allen belts, an area of dangerous radiation. Radiation like this can harm the guidance systems, onboard computers, or other electronics on Orion. Naturally, we have to pass through this danger zone twice, once up and once back. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation. But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation.
But Orion has protection. Shielding will be put to the test as the vehicle cuts through the waves of radiation.
Sensors aboard will record radiation levels for scientists to study. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space.
We must solve these challenges before we send people through this region of space. For this flight.
Okay. So, thoughts on stuff like that? That's an interesting one because he says a lot of interesting shit. After that came out, NASA pretty much buried the guy. Media couldn't get a hold of him. He wasn't allowed for interviews. Kind of interesting. They make him a spokesperson, so to speak, but then they kind of hide him after saying some pretty wild shit. Slip of the tongue, misread, doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. What do you think? What are your thoughts on stuff like that? Because we've seen a lot of stuff like that, and we're not even getting into like this is just people saying shit. We're not even getting into the people on on strings and shit, pretending they're in space, being literally puppeted on strings. So
sure.
What's with that, man? Like, what are your thoughts on that? So, like, I mean, not first he's talking about like we got to put this to the test, even though we've been there many times apparently, And then again, he says, like, we gotta, before we could even go there, we still have this to solve. He's essentially saying.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, I don't work for NASA, but
You should.
you know, yeah, no, I would.
So you claim you don't work.
So yeah.
We heard about your grandfather.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. So I don't know. I mean, you know, they could be talking about testing that specific system that they've sent out, that they've never done it before. You know, I don't think one, you know, weird quip by a NASA spokesperson is, you know, that damning. I mean, it's interesting. You know, a lot of people talk about the lost technology, right? I mean, well, a few things about the moon landing that always got me was the way that it was shown to people was the networks pointed their TV cameras at a projection
At a
of the actual
screen,
moon
yes,
landing. Okay.
yeah.
And then NASA lost the original tapes, you know, okay, that's weird. And then they lost the technology, the Saturn V, the specific engineering for it. And then people say, well,
They destroyed it, they claim, actually.
they say, well, we couldn't go back. We never went back. And then when we tried to, we lost the ability to send people into space altogether, which that's true. You know, early 2000s, we started to, or, you know, 2010 or so, we had to start hitching a ride with the Russians. I think a lot of that could be chalked up to just the culture within the government. In 1969, you had Greatest Generation running everything. These guys that went through Great Depression as kids, World War II vets, all of them, real get it done attitude, real just cut the bullshit and and we were also in this, I mean, we didn't know the implications of satellites and space travel. Like, this could have been the new future weapon, right? Satellites with nuclear weapons on them raining down, like that was a huge fear. And it was, we have to beat the Soviets. We have to do this, guys. And they pulled together, and the original Apollo program had a budget of 4% of the entire federal budget was dedicated to it. Now, fast forward to 2010, what's the culture now? It's this middle management, corporate America kind of culture. People sending meetings, sending emails about meetings, having meetings about emails. Oh, let's circle back to this. Oh, just that bullshit kind of stuff that you deal with in corporate, you know, corporate landscapes. And people just aren't as driven anymore. People aren't, you know, back in the day, everyone smoked cigarettes in the office and no one cared. Now, you know, everyone's, oh, you know, we got to double check this. We got to refer this to a committee. We got to run this safety check on this. There's just a lot more bullshit and red tape today. Less of a get it done attitude. Less of a get it done attitude.
They're not slacking off, cutting corners, and like just perpetrating complete fraud this time. So they do stuff.
I mean, clearly they did some slacking off, but I mean, something happened back then. So
technology.
I'd go to the moon.
Nope. I think I muted this. Let's listen to another one. This is an interesting clip as well. You mentioned that they lost the technology.
It's what they said they did with this amazing technology.
I'd go to the moon in a nanosecond. The problem is we don't have the technology to do that anymore. We used to, but we destroyed that technology, and it's a painful process to build it back.
So okay, so like
that's weird.
Did they purposely destroy it? Did they like right again? They don't give you anything, so it's like it's like a limited hangout. It's in a way, it's like you know, the media should be like, what do you mean you destroyed it? Or, you know, like the media just never seems to want to push back either, and that's a problem as well.
Yeah, that's not even a limited hangout. That's just like an insane thing to say.
Yeah,
it's insane.
Yeah,
it is. I don't have a good answer for you, and that is, you know, that's one of those things where it's like, yeah, that's really fucking weird. Like, you didn't There's no file. I mean, he's talking about the specific engineering of the Saturn V rocket. It's like the greatest thing that you ever built in the 20th century. You didn't save a copy of it. Like,
Yeah,
that's really weird. And who knows? Like,
And the same thing with the tapes that they allegedly filmed, that that they didn't save those either. I mean, like, how can none of these things? These are like the most important, like, archival, materials in human history or whatever. Like, how did they not get saved?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess just off the top of my head, maybe they're worried about leaks. Maybe they're worried about somebody passing that information on to the Russians or something. Who knows? Again, some of this stuff though, like, the fake moon landing thing, the government could have started leaning into it a little bit for whatever reason. Maybe they intentionally taped over the tapes to make it seem like, to give more credence to this fake moon landing thing for whatever reason, so I don't know. And there are some really weird things that you look at, and it's like people just chalk it up to government incompetence. I mean, yes, the government is really incompetent, but taping over the original tapes is that there's no excuse there. Destroying the technology for the Saturn V rocket, that's just retarded. Like, why would you do that?
And I think that you make a really good point about, like, to whatever degree leaning into it or encouraging these types of, like, speculations or whatever. Like, why would they release those kinds of videos with those like spokesmen from the agency talking, like, on the record, on film, saying that stuff? Like, they obviously had, like, an approval process to like put those interviews on tape and have them aired in the first place. Like, I mean, did they just be like, it was just total incompetence and bumbling and oversight? Or, like you said, do they want to seed these kinds of narratives or, like, fuel this kind of speculation, have this kind of, like, doubt, or like, people in perpetual debate about things like this?
And there's also a thing too. It's like, yeah, the rocket made it to the moon, with 1969 technology, but it's like they had, like, and I don't know much about this. I've seen pictures of it. They had, like, hand woven computer code where they would, like, take wires and, like, manually connect the binary code. And it's like, is that what you're going to do if you go back to the moon in 2010 or 20? Are you going to be like, okay, like, this is how we did it in 69? No, they're going to want to, redesign it. They're going to want to redo it. They're not going to, when Volkswagen redid the Beetle in the 2010s, they didn't pull the original design that Hitler approved. They they added a plastic bumper and a modern engine,
Right. And but which one is still running today?
Yeah. Yes.
Let's see what this idiot has to say.
Planned obsolescence.
We only can fly in Earth orbit. That's the farthest that we can go. And this new system that we're building is going to allow us to go beyond and hopefully take humans into the solar system to explore. So the moon, Mars, asteroids, there's a lot of destinations that we could go to, and we're building these building block components in order to allow us to do that eventually.
So he says eventually we are building these components to get there so that we could eventually get to things like, what does he say? Meteors and the moon. He specifically says the moon.
But NASA has a
weird.
PR department, somebody approved that.
That's why it's so weird.
Somebody was like, yeah, we're going
with
that.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. That's the message.
Yeah, put that out there. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
weird,
again, I think, to me, some of this stuff, it does seem like they are leaning into it a bit. Now, is that because, people that believe in a fake moon landing typically believe that JFK was killed by a conspiracy, or, are they just trying to put this out there to, like, oh, you believe in a fake, you believe that 9/11 was an inside job. Oh, you probably believe in a fake moon landing. Is
Right.
that the reason for it? Is it that they're trying to cover up images from outer space that show weird things? It doesn't even have to be aliens. Maybe they're weaponizing space somehow that violates some kind of international treaty and they don't want people to know about it. I mean, there are other explanations, and all the stuff you're bringing up, it's a really good, they're good points, and they're things that just make you scratch your head and say there's something there.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And
I
that's
mean,
why
like,
I'm really excited to finish this book, speak to Bart again, and then we can totally turn everything on its head and start drilling in some of the other stuff, because the way I'm trying to do it is, study this side, and now the other side has a lot to answer for, in my opinion. So they're going to have to do that. And I hope to find some people that can do that properly without just, putting on kind of a talking show, which a lot of people do on both sides. I would probably say more so on the side. I would probably say more so on Bart's side, because I think that's where the money is. So that's where you'd probably find the grifters. So, but I don't want to dismiss it just because it's a good opportunity for grifters, right?
Yeah, and a lot of this kind of stuff too is like, and I was thinking about this before I came on here. It's like some of these theories you see, like, and I'm like with flat Earth, you'll see a documentary or something, an hour-long documentary come out about it, and like they'll spend 20 minutes like framing you first. They'll say, just think about the world that you live in, and
Yes.
the lies that could be possible. And it's almost like they'll spend 20 minutes talking about essentially nothing, not giving you facts, but just telling you, hey, there's a lot of things to question in your reality.
Priming
Which,
you.
yes, there are, but it's like that's almost like a manipulation tactic. It's the
Yeah,
same
they're
thing. Like if
priming the
I were to sit down with someone and, like, Jordan, if I had a conversation with you and I said, Jordan, I really don't like it when people are closed-minded, and it's just when people try and hold back parts of themselves, it's just really distasteful. And don't you agree with that? And you'd be like, yeah, yeah. And so it's like I'm framing the conversation with you to where, like, you don't realize it, but I'm getting you to subconsciously open yourself up more. And it's like that's what a lot of these, especially flat Earth documentaries do. And I've seen fake moon landing documentaries do the same thing. Those ones that I talked about earlier that were on mainstream television, they used to talk about the flag flapping in the breeze. Obviously, there's a rod in it, and as they twist it, it makes the fabric move around. It's like they would talk about the thing that you can see behind the astronaut, the so-called wire, which was just an antenna. It was an antenna on the back of their suits that, like, how their radios worked. And so it's like this shit was on like Fox and Discovery and History, and it's like they're putting shit out that's like really easy to debunk if you know what's going on. So it's like I'm always really suspicious when I turn on some sort of video or documentary about it and I see instantly that framing kind of stuff going on.
Yeah, man, I know what you mean. Absolutely.
Well, and to the degree too, where like if you know what's going on, and like the truth is we don't know what's going on. Like you have like to be able to like form like a an opinion about it one way or the other. Like you have to accept things as being like, this is true or this is not true. Like I'm accepting what this person says is true, or I'm accepting what that person says it's true. And like, this is like truly something that like, not a single one of us is qualified to say like, yeah, I know this to be like the case from like my personal experience. I was there. Like I wore the suit. I sat in the ship. I like blasted off. You know what I mean? Like there's like it's to accept anything as like, well, that's the truth. Like you're basically like having to say like, well, this is what am willing to believe the most.
And I will just say too, I had a couple more things. The main reasons I believe in the moon landing are, like I talked about, where the communications were tracked, the pictures of the buggy tracks, And additionally, the movements of the astronauts, people used to say maybe they slowed it down. It was just regular people jumping around and they
Yeah,
slowed it down. They've analyzed their movements, and they've also
that doesn't make sense.
analyzed the dust that they kicked up. Like when their boots hit the ground and the dust,
Yeah,
they've analyzed how that dust flies up, and it's consistent with moon gravity, which is like 1/8 or 1/4 of Earth gravity. So it's like that's pretty powerful there. It's like, that's a whole another level of fakery to fake moon gravity in the dust. And then I had one more thing here. People often point out the deep fake detectors that they've used on images, or like the Russians came out and said they ran it through these AI deep fake detectors, but an AI deepfake detector is designed to detect images that were altered with AI, not necessarily how you would doctor an image from the 1960s where you had to like actually physically put something there. So those are all just things that everything combined, the buggy tracks, the communications, the dust and everything, when you put it all together, it's like it might have actually been easier to send people up. Now, did they capture something on film on the way up? Did the astronauts see something? Why were they in quarantine for 3 weeks? Or did they have to be debriefed?
well, of course they got to put them in quarantine. That's the rules. You got to follow the script, dude.
Well, and people talk about the Apollo 11 post-mission press conference with Aldrin and Armstrong and the cuck that stayed inside the spaceship. And they say, well, these guys look really weird. And it's like, well, a few things with that. Like, number one, and I think someone, maybe I was watching your Cybrel show and Cybrel brought this up, or maybe Habsburg brought this up, but that the astronauts are just kind of weird guys and they don't like to give press interviews. It's like these guys were like selected for the mission because of how stoic their temperament was. I mean, like, these aren't normal human beings. Like, to be able to, like, if someone were to just come to you and say, Jordan, we want to put you in a tiny box and shoot you fucking however many hundreds of thousands of miles away from the Earth, like, think about what that would do to you floating out into space in this little box. And then if something starts to go wrong and you've got a normal human up there, they're going to start panicking and freaking out. I mean, there's been astronauts that have freaked out and like gone crazy just on the International Space Station. Like, I think there was a story. I mean, don't quote me on this. I think like someone tried to open the hatch while they were up there, and like these other astronauts had to restrain them. So it's like it can psychologically break you just being up there. And like these guys that did this mission, they weren't PR guys. They weren't actors. They were like,
yes, they were. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to stop you there, my friend. That is exactly. I was gonna rebut you by saying they were actually chosen because they have charisma and they are good looking and they are all American looking and
they're third degree Freemasons
and they're fucking Masons. So they're gonna go along with the goddamn plan, and they're gonna. Even though for whatever reason they didn't seem to want to do media afterwards, the media they did, they could trust them to do that. And if they look like that because they are having mental health issues, then that's like super sick of Nats to put people in front of a camera like that, like animals when they're having
I just meant that like
crisis.
I just meant the post interview that you saw was them immediately coming out of that 3-week quarantine where they would have had minimal human contact. Yep. Like they just went through this thing of going to the moon and back. Then they're in quarantine for 3 weeks, and now they get paraded in front of the cameras. And it's like, yeah, they're nervous and awkward, but I mean, they, you say they're PR guys, like they were like military as what I remember. They were like officers or. Like
they didn't I'm not saying
any...
they're not. I'm not saying they're not that. That's definitely. I don't think that's what me or Habsburg are trying to say. But
well, I mean, think about it. Like Elvis was military too. I mean, like just because you're military.
A lot of people were military.
So is Jimi Hendrix, I guess.
Right. You know what I'm saying? I mean, Jerry Garcia. All these guys are in the military. So, but I mean, whatever. I think again, like I think that there's ways like anybody could you can look at it from the perspective that Jordan is saying, or the perspective that you're saying, and
Huh.
like kind of part of it is
They
we're going to
look
be
pretty happy here, huh?
we're going to
Wonder-
be projecting
wonder
we're going to be projecting our own like biases and our own personal conception. Like you look at their face, and there have been like so many studies about this kind of thing, and like they show you an image of a person's face and be like, oh, what's their emotion say, and this person is going to say like, well, that person is feeling this, that person is feeling that, but it's like it's more like a reflection of like our perspective than the actual whatever's going on with that person. We see what we see, what we're like inclined to see, but and I
I'm
think
also
that's
trying to. Sorry, keep going. Sorry.
no, just that's like how the mind works, like I'm going to say like, oh, they look this way, and if I'm inclined to think that way.
So were all three of them, Neil, Buzz, and the Cuck, were they all 33rd degree Freemasons?
I know that Armstrong and Aldrin definitely were. I'm not sure who the third person on. I'm just be totally honest with you. I'm not sure who the third person on Apollo 11 was off the top of my head. Do you know, Jordan?
Sorry, the third person.
Yeah,
of
who
Apollo
is
11?
Michael
who's the
Collins,
other
was it?
Yeah, it's Collins. Yep.
Yeah. I Googled it. I guessed it before Google popped up though.
Okay.
I just want everyone to know that. Yeah, Michael.
It's interesting here in this photo, Alan Shepard, he's getting his medal. He was always really happy in photos. And it's interesting because I think he just go into orbit. And I think during that time there was no moon landings, fake or real. So he didn't have to push a lie, whether the other guys did or not. So no reason for him to be upset.
Alan Shepard was a Freemason too, though. He was. Yeah.
No. I'm just saying that, like, I think it's. I guess I'm just lending my belief to the thought that my thought to the belief that whether they made it to the moon or not, they still made it into low Earth orbit or whatever.
They went somewhere.
Yeah, went somewhere. Yeah, exactly. So,
again, though, they could have seen an alien spaceship or something. They could have.
Dude, I love you, man. You're the best.
They could have been told.
You sound so concerned too. That's why I say that, because you're like, dude, man, like
they could have saw an alien spaceship, and they could have been told. They could have been told, you better shut the fuck up about this, or we're going to kill you. Or they could have been. Maybe they had some sort of military mission up there. Maybe they had to put something on the moon, or again, maybe they did something that violated some sort of international treaty. Maybe the moon mission wasn't just 100%. Ooh, let's go knock some golf balls around up there. Maybe they did something in a military capacity that they have to, never talk about. There's all kinds of things.
I can get behind that because it was like shortly after, I think it was after the Apollo missions, for the most part, that it went from NASA started going from this is about science and exploration to let's do commercial related military contracting, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I can totally. And now look at where things are now. You got like Jeff Bezos going, you got SpaceX going. So yeah, I could totally see that being the case. I mean, the fact that they were is pretty bold to the fact that they were like racing and battling the Russians to try and push that notion that, oh, it's about science anyways, because right beside everything there was that military diplomatic kind of thought anyways, like we're dealing with another country that we have to beat here, which I think is another huge piece, because you just look at like you got Russia just dunking and dunking on the U.S. in the space race and just putting them on a poster every frickin' day. The first this, the first that, the first this.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, fucking the U.S. come out on top, and not only did Russia not come second, they didn't come third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Like, it's just odd that, you know,
Communism
Russia was
sucks.
even saying that. I don't think it's necessarily possible. You were saying before, like, we were talking about other countries, and it's like, yeah, Russia didn't necessarily flat out come out and say like, oh, they're lying, but like they said a few times, like, yeah, we don't think that's possible yet. Yeah, we don't know about that. You know, and it wasn't, and I mean, it's interesting because it wasn't even Kennedy who it wasn't even Kennedy's decision to go to the moon. It was a guy named George M. Low who pressured an internal NASA committee into pushing that goal. So
when
Kennedy
first brought the notion, it was supposed to be a joint venture between the United States and Russia to go to the moon. Like that was how it was like originally that was like how it was originally framed, the moon flight. And
the we don't do things because they're easy, but we do them because they're hard. That speech?
Because they are hard.
Because they are hard. Like my cock.
I mean, check it out.
Just like my cock.
But what Jordan was saying about, like, them potentially like encountering, I mean, Adam was saying about them potentially encountering some kind of like alien life or this or that. Like, I think that one of the things that you got to think about is that, like, the story about the the moon landing and has set up kind of a culture of thinking about space and other places in a certain way. And now that we're like having all of this alien disclosure is imminent, like, why what is significant about them like having this Orion mission to the moon and like in this same atmosphere right now, as all of this disclosure and things like this. Like, I think that it does like lend some credibility to if we can go to this other place in space, they can come to us too, and that sort of like helps to frame the narrative, if that this is like what's being developed, is that there's aliens, they've come here, they've been here, this and that, and we're gonna finally let like that's the our like our universal kind of outlook is like, it makes sense because we've been out there to places out in space too, they can get to us.
Yeah. I saw that comment from Mad Mac about having actors for presidents. I mean, he hit the nail on the head. I think Reagan was an actor. Bill Clinton was clearly compromised as all shit. You got G.W. Bush the second, son of the first. I mean, it's a real shit show, American politics. Now
Obama, he's a fucking actor. Maybe not a Hollywood actor, but he's a fucking actor.
He's a good actor.
He's a good actor.
He's
like probably one of the, like, come on, he's right. Like, when I was young, I was like, and before like right when this guy came out, and I wasn't, I was still young. I was like, whoa, like he's
good.
One
he's
that like
charismatic.
Yeah, fuck, man. Yeah.
But
like basketball and cell phones and Blackberries and Cadillac limos and
Marlboro Reds. He's a.
But Jordan, what you were saying about the Soviets dunking on us, I mean, that's absolutely right. They totally were, which is crazy because they've got this inefficient system of government over there. But it just goes
set of morals.
And I talked about that last time where they could make mistakes and they could kill astronauts, and they could. I mean, there's so many of these lost cosmonaut stories that you hear about, and that they didn't have their mistakes published like the US did. And about the point about weaponizing space is, and why there was this huge drive to be first and then why it fizzled out after. It's like, did something happen? Because again, all of the people that the US had that were really on the cutting edge of it were Nazis. All the people the Soviets had were former Nazis. And it's like, did the Nazis, were they planning something? I mean, were they wanting to do something? Did they have some sort of theory that both sides knew about? Right. And so it's like, we got to be the first one to go up there and put, I know the Nazis did have a plan for like a bomber. They wanted to develop this rocket that would like, or not a rocket, but like a ship that would take off and it would just like orbit Earth and it would be able to drop missiles. And it was like a future weapon dream kind of thing. But that was like before then they found out, well, it's just easier to make a rocket and shoot a intercontinental ballistic missile out. But it's like, was there something that they wanted to do to, to be first in space and put something up there or whatever? Like, was that the real goal?
Yeah, man. I think sorry, Habsburg, you can go, but I don't know real quick, if you guys have, that just makes me think, if you guys play video games, if you guys have played the newer age Wolfenstein games, where it's like an alternative reality where the Nazis won the war, and it's like, I think it takes place in like the 60s and 70s, and I think they made one in the 80s, but it's like the technology is like even past like what we have today, and it's like a really interesting concept. So I'm sure
like
they had
Man in the High Castle kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Like that on like kind of like that on almost like on technological steroids, because the technology is just so much crazier. But yeah, man, I mean, with their technological understandings and their brilliant minds, and like honestly, like I think their belief and reliance on the occult and magic and just dark forces, I think that really would have made a real push if they weren't dismantled, and if they instead grew and conquered.
Or
Possible,
or maybe they did, like maybe
Yes,
that
exactly.
was the whole
Exactly.
idea, was to
Yeah.
get it to like be like dispersed and like actually like really have these other sides that were like ostensibly the opposition use their know-how and their intellects and abilities to create these things outside of like their system. But the other thing is, like, to that point, maybe maybe they had discovered things that we like that have been like hidden throughout human history. I mean, they sent like archaeologists and all of these people like all around the world to to try to like uncover all these ancient sites and things like this. And we don't know what they found. I mean, that's like what
Indy.
Indiana Jones was about. I mean,
Raiders of the Lost Ark.
but that really
crazy,
that really was true, right? Like, they really did that. And that was a priority, for them, because they like, part of it was like trying to vet out these like notions of like the origins of their race, and like being these like ancient people that came from like certain places, and they were sending the expeditions all over the world, and who knows what they might have uncovered. I mean, in addition to having like more advanced engineers, and the Germans always have, like, look at their cars versus I mean, like, just things like that, like they prioritize engineering in that society, but they certainly may have discovered like some kind of ancient technology, the esoteric thing that I don't think it's that ridiculous to consider.
Not at all, man. And just with how much effort they were putting into all these other things that weren't necessary. I mean, they were, related to winning the war and the future and all that, but they weren't, it wasn't necessarily battlefield helping. Definitely not front line helping or anything like that. So just to think of all the resources, money, people, and stuff that they put towards these other causes, knowing that, like, we have a war going on here, that, like, we maybe we should we win this war first and then do that? No, like, let's do both at the same time. Like, that's how focused they were and crazy they were, to an extent. I mean, as me and Habsburg have talked about, and we'll probably get into more on the show eventually, just the amount of drug usage that the Nazis were caught up in, for performance, for experimentation, for performance,
mind control,
Pervitin,
Pervitin, man.
That's a big. I think that's a huge factor too, because if, especially when we talked about the book Blitzed, it's a great book. They talk about there, like, we're talking about how great the German tanks were and everything. Even with how great the German tanks were, like, if they weren't all hopped up and high and just motoring on, there's actually a good chance that, like, it didn't matter how great their tanks were, to an extent. They still probably would have gotten their asses kicked, but they were able to just keep going, and they didn't have to rest as much. Obviously, they can just go, to the extent where it was just, like, fuck, man, like, we can't take these guys. Like, we should be able to take these guys. Like, what's going on here? And then it just, like, once they found out, I think it was the tank corps that they initially tried it on. If I'm remembering that correctly. And then they realized, like, we got to get this to everyone, sort of thing. So yeah, that's huge. That's huge.
Well, Blitzkrieg, like, I mean, the people talk about the miracle of Dunkirk. Like, the soldiers that were chasing the British had been up for 3 days. That's why Hitler ordered them to stop, because he's like, these guys have been hopped up on Pervitin. A few things with the Nazis. One thing is, like, they developed that, allegedly developed the bell, the spinning mercury bell. It was called Die Glocke. And and the cage for it is still, it's somewhere, it's like in the Ardennes forest. The cage that they had this, it was like a bell that had all these ropes and tethers around it, and they would spin mercury in it, and it would levitate. And then all of the original UFO sightings looked like a similar design to Die Glocke. That you had the saucer aspect of it come out, but, like, Die Glocke was, like, just a bell. And so it's like, you've got that, and then Habsburg, you were talking about all of the occult connections to, we see that even still today with in the Hillary Clinton emails during the Iraq War. She's asking questions about, did we find the tomb of Gilgamesh? Right, like the biblical giant. And so it's like there is this interest, still. Yes, the Nazis had this interest in the occult and occult artifacts, and they were looking for the Ark of the Covenant, and but it's like people are still, here's Hillary Clinton inquiring about the tomb of a biblical giant, and of course there's evidence for giants everywhere, but
But you talk about the Ark of the Covenant, like, doesn't Trump have, like, this, like, solid gold, replica of the Ark of the Covenant at his house?
Yes, at Mar-a-Lago.
At Mar-a-Lago, right?
Yes.
I mean,
yes, I remember.
This stuff, like, this stuff is of relevance. I mean, these people are, like, ritually, engaged with this kind of stuff, the power structure. I'll tell you another thing that, since we were bringing up drugs, and all this, I think when the Apollo 11, moon landing happened, I mean, what was going on that summer was, like, the, like, largest mass intake of, like, drugs, like, in, human history. Like, a couple of weeks later was Woodstock. Like that, like, for the, the summer of 1969, like, I mean, you had, like, these festivals, like, masses of people, just like LSD being unleashed, in a way that it had never been before, and like concurrent with this event, like, what were they doing to like, like the plasticity of these people's minds, and like their degree of like influenceability, like things like that. I mean, like, just again, since you brought up the drugs, and like, what these experiments were happening like back then, with the Nazis, with the paperclip programs, incorporating those kind of technologies. I mean, how might that relate? And like what people were doing on a mass scale at that time, and who was making the like literally in 1969, basically every hit of acid that was being consumed that summer when the moon landing happened was being made by Owsley Stanley, like literally manufactured by one person who was formerly a JPL and Rocketdyne employee.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know. It's weird stuff. Like that. Like it's, if it's completely like a tangential connection or whatever. There's still like that the timing was concurrent. But I think that like a lot, and again, we talk about like with those kinds of like chemicals, people like encounter entities and aliens, and have these kind of like cosmic type of journeys and things like this. And like, I think to so much of a degree, like whatever our space programs are or are not about, like it's going to culminate in like we're going to be told that they're these aliens pretty soon, right? I mean, like this seems to be like immediately on the horizon.
Yeah.
And yeah, and so like to what degree like people's like psychological, spiritual interface, by taking those drugs, like prep them, for these, events that they're also being, prepped for, with like a space program, all of it culminating in like, okay, here are our alien overlords, and they've always been here, and
Yeah, I mean, it's quite possible. Like, you're right about these ceremonies. Like the same thing with Burning Man. It's like they burn this giant effigy out. And it's this big sex and drug hedonistic, thing. Same thing with Bohemian Grove, where all of these elites go out and burn this owl effigy, and like they take this shit seriously. Like they don't just think they're going out in the woods and having a bonfire. Like they really think that they are transferring like their sins onto the owl and then burning the owl, and it like burns their sins away. Like these people that do these terrible things think that they're cleansing their soul by doing that. We talked about Werner von Braun. He's got some quote where he says the last thing that they'll do is an alien false flag.
like
You
while
know?
he was like dying, he told his assistant
Yeah.
that. It was like, yeah.
So it's like, what's with this UFO disclosure, it's like what is going on here? Why now? And you look at shit like the War of the Worlds broadcast by Orson Welles in the 30s. Like that's weird. He made it seem like he came on the radio and told everyone there's an alien invasion. They got to monitor the results of it for a little bit, and then was that some sort of test tube kind of project? Okay, how are people going to react when and people like that? Oh, it was just a joke, ha ha ha. No, like people were like standing outside their houses with shotguns, like waiting for these aliens to come. Like that whole thing, and that was like what, 1930 something. Like that's weird. Now the head of the space program says there's an alien false flag coming. Okay, and now of course it's Trump. Of course it's fucking Donald Trump that's going to come out. And the recent UFO release was, you scrolled through the website and it said aliens are here, they walk among us. Hinton Prime, thanks for that comment. That's a nice comment there. Saying there's aliens here, they walk among us, and then it's some stupid fucking trolling post about illegal aliens.
Yeah.
Totally. No, and to your point, dude, like with those, like you mentioned Bohemian Grove, like we talked about Sasha Shulgin again. Like he was a member of Bohemian Club, like was like at the Bohemian Grove every year for like 30 or 40 years. Like, well, why were they inviting Alexander Shulgin? What was he doing? Like, I mean, he was cooking up whatever thing they were giving out, for that cremation of care ceremony. I mean, like that's not just like not by design. And then 6 weeks later, he's at Bohemian Grove. Then he's at Burning Man. It's the same, same
Yeah.
guy is like, like the OG, guy at Burning Man. I mean, Sasha Shulgin, Paul Stamets, like all of these guys, but it's also all of the Silicon Valley guys. I mean, Burning Man it's like everybody from Silicon Valley is there. What else is in Silicon Valley? Right next to Stanford's, like campus is the NASA Ames Research Center. It's like, NASA's, like biggest advanced, research facility is right next to Stanford, is right next to Google.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like there's so much overlap, with all of that. And that's like they're all at these places. But yeah, you have these guys who are like these, like the ultimate like drug engineers, are like coordinating those events. So I mean,
Well, Burning Man, it's like a 3-week thing, isn't it? It's not.
It's
long? Holy crap.
it goes basically they start setting it up like the weekend before, and then like people people come out that volunteer and are like setting it up, but the actual like Burning Man festival starts like the week and ends like on Labor Day.
But is it like a 1-week thing? My point is, it's like that's a
I mean,
long time.
a lot of people are coming out there like prior to it's
Mhm.
starting to set up, but the official like festival is like the week of Labor Day, culminating on Labor Day.
I mean, that's a long time to be out at a music festival. I've gone to music festivals that are not a mainstream one, but 2 or 3 days, and by the
Yeah.
third day, you are completely fried. You have taken all sorts of substances. You don't know hardly, which way is up or down, and to be out there for that long in the middle of the desert in
In
some
the
sort of
slime.
weird pagan festival. And Habsburg, you talk a lot about the LSD manufacturing. It's like I don't think most people understand that. Like, I'm sure you do, but like that's a really hard chemical to make. It's not like you're making dabs or DMT or something where those are just extractions. You just use a solvent and pull something out. LSD, you synthesize it. You're doing shit to the molecule, and that's so much. Like if you look at the recipe for it, it's like you got to have a degree in chemistry almost to make it. And it's like, who's really pushing this kind of stuff? Like, you've got a sophisticated lab that makes not only LSD, but all of these research chemicals that came out, 2CE, 2CB. I mean, you had that really great breakdown, that episode on psychedelics that you did. I really enjoyed that. Where you
that was
talked
a
about
great
the
job.
history and
But that was
and
one
all of,
dude. Like that was literally one guy made all of them, and he was working. And he was
That's
working
crazy.
at Dow. Who was a collaborator with IG Farben, with the Nazis. And then he's the one who's like, he's this like common connecting point. Okay, we there is like no way to underestimate like the importance of this one guy, Sasha Shulgin, in all of these circles, because he's the guy, from Dow, connecting, to Bohemian Grove, connecting to Burning Man, connecting to NASA and the Apollo 11 astronauts. Like Buzz Aldrin, like was at his house, was at Sasha Shulgin's house every Friday night for their like potluck social dinners. I mean, that's like it's crazy. Why was this guy like connecting everything that we've just been talking about? One guy, and he invented all of them. The other thing about it is not only do you have to, like for LSD specifically, like not only do you have to, be able to be capable of performing like a pretty intricate synthesis. I mean, you don't have to have a degree in chemistry. You have to like understand chemistry pretty well. But how do you get the precursors? Like, how do you get enough ergotamine tartrate to like perform that synthesis?
They're
There's
monitored.
like not only are they monitored, but to create it, like LSD 25 is synthesized, but ergotamine, it comes from the ergot fungus. That, in order to get that, like you have to deliberately infect a crop, right? Like you have to find a farmer that has a field full of wheat or rye or some kind of commercial grain that would otherwise like make their money to like go to market with, right? You have to convince that farmer to infect the entire crop and to make it right, to be like, yeah, we're going to take this whole field of wheat and infect it with ergot fungus so that we can get that and like create this ergotamine. Like how many places on earth is that even happening? Right. So like you have to get that precursor. You have to like have and be able to only create that like once a year. Like you can't produce like a grain crop multiple times a year. Like in the parts of the planet that you can grow it, you can only do that once a year. So like it's so hard to get to the point where you're even making that synthesis with that stuff.
Yeah.
So so there's sorry, and I don't mean to like turn this into another like psychedelics episode, but
all good, man.
Just to Adam's point, like that stuff is so crazy, and there's so much engineering that goes into making like a single batch of LSD anywhere on Earth. And it's only happened a handful of times. Like only a handful of people on the planet have ever made it successfully.
Yeah. I took LSD a few times when I was younger, and the first few times I knew it was, real and legitimate, and the people I did it with said, yeah, this is what it is. One time it was at this music festival. I took what was supposed to be acid. It was on paper, so it was clearly some kind of chemical that was dropped on there, but the experience was basically the perfect, and I've never talked about this before, but it was the perfect drug for like an MK Ultra type thing if you want to set it up, because and this is the wildest experience of my life. Like 45 minutes to an hour after I took this acid, I forgot basically everything about myself. I forgot my name. I forgot where I was. I forgot who I was. I could not tell you what was going on. And I remember I thought I was in some kind of a dream or a time loop. I mean, my grip on reality was totally not like you typically get on psychedelics. At this point, I was an experienced psychonaut, and this was like complete disassociation from reality. And I could tell you, if in that state, if I was in some kind of MK Ultra, you could have convinced me of anything. You could have convinced me, I don't care what it was. You could have, because I had my own theories in my head. Like I thought I was literally in a time wrinkle or a time loop, like in this dream. And that experience really changed me to, realize that these chemicals aren't just all fun and games. Like there's some really powerful things going on here, and you got to be careful with them, especially this man-made shit. Mushrooms, I've always had good times there. Don't do drugs, kids, but
no.
But yeah, that was a wild, and it was really similar to what people talk about on like Datra, or there's a zombie powder that Haitian voodoo masters use. That they grind up a puffer fish and some other shit, and they make people think that they're dead. Like they reduce your heart rate and your breathing so low that people think you're dead. They bury you. The voodoo master digs you up. This is all documented. 3 days later, and then they wake you up with some chemicals, and then you're basically like a slave to this person, this voodoo master. Haitian zombie powder.
It's scopolamine. But yeah, I mean the thing is, Adam, you bring up a good point. And
Had a tough experience with that before. I assume.
Have I had
this,
no
zombie
Habsburg.
powder?
Like what's really interesting is so when in 2012 I went down to Peru, to the into the jungle in the Amazon basin, and I was down there for like 3 weeks with like one of the like. I mean, like, dude, this guy is like really serious. This is not some like, this is not some like white guy in freaking Santa Barbara, like, I mean, this is, this guy is like, one of the like serious, like Shipibo, lineage shamans, in the world. Really famous. I'm not going to like drop a name or anything, but, anyways. And this was like almost 15 years ago. And, this was before, this was like before this, there was like a real like tourist industry around these things. And we did, like a real, like legitimate, authentic dieta. We like basically like starved ourselves for like weeks and, drank ayahuasca every night.
Is that
it's Spanish for Spanish for diet. And so what people don't really understand about ayahuasca is that ayahuasca is like two components. It's like the Banisteriopsis caapi, which is the vine, mixed with, although not all ayahuasca preparations are mixed. Like it's this vine, the Banisteriopsis caapi. Most of the time they will mix it with what they call chacruna, which is like Psychotria viridis, which is a DMT bearing plant. And then the concoction, like what happens is, see, your body has manufactures these monoamine oxidase, and it basically like cancels out the endogenous DMT that your body makes, or the DMT that's like in anything that like you would actually consume, right? That's why when you smoke, DMT extraction, you have to smoke so much of it to like make it actually active, that you're overwhelming the monoamine oxidase that's being like manufactured in your body, that's like canceling it out. So when you drink ayahuasca, the monoamine oxidase inhibitors, MAOIs, in the and those are like the beta carbolines, the harmalines and beta carbolines that are in the Banisteriopsis caapi vine. They cancel, they like deactivate your MAOs in your body and inhibit them, and that way the DMT that's in the brew, but also that's endogenously in your body, cross the blood-brain barrier. So that's what ayahuasca is and what it actually does. So
doesn't
when
it
you're
make
on
the trip a lot longer?
Well, it's completely different. Like the oral ingestion of it it's not the same thing as smoking it, because you like the beta carbolines and the harmalines, like unto themselves, are completely active too. It's like it's way, like the spectrum of like the experience is much different than just the DMT component with ayahuasca. So what I'm, where I'm getting to that is that when I say dieta, what we were doing was we're, completely like making art. So like there are all of these foods that you can eat, right, that are like that like have monoamine oxidase, or like promote that like prevent your like the monoamine oxidase from being inhibited, and and basically like cancel out the effect. So to prepare your body to really get like a full effect of ayahuasca, you have to prepare your body by like not eating most foods, and you have to like limit your intake to like very basic foods that won't interact in your gut with with the MAOIs, and to get the full experience. So for like, we prepped ourselves before we got down there for 2 weeks, started taking the diet, and then took the full diet while we were in the jungle, drinking every night, every other night actually. And then you get really like sick actually if you stop the diet, even after you stop drinking the ayahuasca. Like you have to keep the diet for like another week after you finish, or you like physically will get sick. And I physically got sick because I didn't take that too seriously on the tail end. But my point being that when I was down, so sorry, like that there's the background, and I hope that like makes sense. But when I was down there working with this shaman, one of the things that he was like doing for the people who had been on multiple dietas, like we weren't just getting like ayahuasca and stuff, we were getting these other like plant preparations, and like crazy stuff. And so everybody had to drink this one thing called bobansana, but then people who had been on more than one dieta got like this other thing. And then the people who were like the leaders, the American leaders who brought us down there, who had been on many dietas, they were getting like this other thing. And so twice during the dieta, they got like a scopolamine dose. And one was on a night where we didn't have a ceremony, and one was on a night where we did have a ceremony. And these guys like took like like a scopolamine extract, plant. It was from like a datura type of plant. Took this like in combination with drinking ayahuasca and ceremony, and like, dude, it was pretty wild. And these guys were like both probably 15 years older than me, 20 years older than me. And like it was pretty wild to see, they in talking to them afterwards, and they were like, yeah, like physically, it was like excruciating. And so like I have not taken it. I have seen people under the effects of it, and it was like
Okay, wow.
totally unbelievable. So yeah, scopolamine is real deal stuff. It's
So when you went down to the Amazon, where were you staying? Were you like in the jungle camping out, or
okay,
like
all right, yeah. So check this out. So the guy, the curandero, the ayahuasquero, he has a home in Pucallpa, which is like, kind of like a gateway city to in the Amazon basin, right? It's a town of like maybe like 100,000 people or something. It's a like a sizable population, but it's really primitive, right? But it's like an actual town. So we met him there, and then he has this property like way up the river, right? Where it's just like 20 people could go at any time, because there were like 20 little, they're called tombos, and basically it was just a platform, with like a little mattress and a mosquito net, right? And so there are 20 of them. So at this property, so there are 20 people that could go. And from Pucallpa, we took like a cab, like a taxi, like multiple taxis for our group. Like it was a 3-hour drive to where like the road ended at the river, and then we were met by these like long, wooden canoes with outboard motors, and they took us like 4 more hours upriver to where like the site was. And so we stayed yeah, dude, and we stayed out there. And it was like everybody had their little tombo with like a little hole in the ground behind it, where you would like go to the bathroom. And like basically we were like starving. The shaman had like a little staff out there, and they would like bring us two. We got like two, you could call it a meal every day, but basically it was like a little serving of like a scoop of unseasoned quinoa, and then boiled green plantains, so like unripened plantains. And that was all we were allowed to eat for like 2 weeks.
brutal?
We basically all like lost insane amounts of weight, like 'cause at a certain point, we just stopped eating it. You'd be like, I don't even feel like eating. There's no point. This stuff is so like gnarly and unpalatable. Like, I'm not even gonna eat it. And so like the more ayahuasca you drank, like every night, every other night, and the less you ate, and the more like, your body stopped like producing, like the things that would inhibit, the medicine from working, like the stronger and stronger and stronger it would get like over time.
Wow.
And anyways, so that's
What-
that was kind of like what that was like. And it was crazy, dude. And we were like really, really, really deep in the jungle. we did get okay, so we did get like a meal of chicken one time, but they like brought the chickens from Pucallpa. So like when we were in these like canoes, these like longboats, I looked down and there were these like burlap sacks like in the middle of the boat, and they were like moving around because there were chickens in there.
Yeah, dog.
I mean, it was
Wow.
so crazy, dude. Like, anyways, I could go on and on, but it was like, it was like the real deal, Like, I mean, it was
Yeah,
like,
man. That's crazy.
like the heart of darkness jungle, like craziest, place on earth, and we had like you could hear jaguars at night, like I like there were tarantulas, this freaking big. I mean, you can't believe what's out there. So.
Wow, Jordan, are we going too long, or can we?
No, we're okay. We'll wrap it up pretty soon.
Right
are
on.
there are two other things before we do wrap it up. There are two other quick things I wanted to bring up about the moon, but
I just wanted to ask Habsburg like two things.
Yeah, man.
Two-part question. Number one, like what was the experience like? Did you get a lot of like interpersonal growth from it, like see entities, see aliens, that kind of thing? And the second part of my question is, I've heard people that take DMT in that environment or take the ayahuasca, they have experiences where they think that they're like a jaguar, and like the theory is that like because these jaguars take these substances too, that you can like channel the consciousness of a jaguar or any other animal that's taken them. What
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a lot of like mythology and things that are like built. There's a lot of a lot of stories about this stuff. I didn't have like that experience. I mean, I had some like really deep journeys. And like the visions of a lot of it is like encountering things that are out there. A lot of it is like making contact with your like deceased relatives. Like you're kind of like crossing over into these realms where like you're making some kind of contact, and maybe that sounds like hard to believe or implausible, but like that was like my main thing was like, and whether it was like something, whether that was like a totally authentic thing, or whether that was like some kind of like just
trick?
yeah, trick, or like like emanation from inside of me, projection, like that was largely the experience. It was like connecting with my like lineage, and with people at the same time. And like we did this like several ceremonies, so they were all really different. And some of them were, like, wow, these were like very positive experiences. Some of it was dark as hell, dude. And like, like what you personally went through and what you saw the people around you going through, like freaking out. And like, not like,
Psychedelics
I mean,
get weird.
I'm
Psychedelics
just
get
being,
weird for sure.
well, and ayahuasca is like by degrees more powerful than any other
Mhm.
psychedelic. I mean, there's just like nothing that is comparable, to what this thing is. And then, it's not, and you also got to remember with ayahuasca that it's not just the substance. Again, it's like your body being like prepped. So, the degree to which you have like, chemically conditioned your body to be able to receive it is going to be like how potent it is. But also you're like in a ceremony with these practitioners, and these guys, I mean, for lack of a better word, they're like witch doctors. I mean, they would say that pretty much. These guys are like magician like practitioners, and they are like curating these visions for you, like through these, like they're playing instruments, they're singing these ancient songs that are like handed down to them. Like this is a lineage. Like these guys are shamans that their forebears were they passed this down and trained subsequent generations for like thousands of years to do this stuff. And so like they are holding this container of like the experience, the ceremony. It's not just like the actual drug, it's your body, and it's also like what they are doing externally, and like the music they're playing and the songs that they're singing, and they start singing one song and you start traveling in, to one place. They start singing another song and you start traveling to a different place, and like you're also in a group with all these people and you're all kind of going into like similar places at the same time. It's like a spaceship. And so like I don't know. I mean, it's kind of, you ask some like really good questions, and I don't want to like derail everything like too much, but like, yeah, this was, I mean, you hear a lot of stuff about this, and you hear like, I mean, some of it's true, some of it's not. Like I can tell you like all of this is true. Like I did that. So
Would you do it again
um
if you could go back? Like not like today, but like do you think that the experience was like positive or negative, and like would you do it again if you could go back in time?
I'm not sure that I would do that again. Like
Oh,
I have
Wow.
I have subsequently, like,
I'm surprised hearing that from you. It must
yeah,
have
no,
been. I'm very interested to know what it was like.
I don't feel any like strong calling to do it again. If I did, I'm still like connected, enough to, those circles where like I could be like, get myself back down there, and but I have subsequently, like been in ceremony, several times, like here in the United States, with practitioners from Peru, from, like legit from the jungle, and also from like, gringo shamans, here, that are, um like from the
Gringo
United
show.
States. Yeah, gringo, there's a lot of gringo shamans these days, that's for sure.
It sounds like a
Um
shitty comedy special.
No doubt. It could be like the name of like a shitty jam band, Gringo Shaman.
Gringo
But
show. Yeah,
But so
that's
so
good too.
Habsburg, I just
but
meant like if you could go back as like your past self, like before you did this for the first time,
mhm.
like travel back in time, would you do it again for the first time?
Oh yeah. Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
definitely.
Oh,
Definitely.
okay.
I would
Okay.
like, I mean, that was like,
Okay.
Okay.
that was
That
a,
makes sense.
that
I
was
thought
like
you meant
the
no. Okay.
most. No, 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 no. I'm not, I'm just saying like, I'm like 45 years old.
You
I'm
just
not doing
wouldn't
that
repeat
again.
it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm not, I don't need to go do that again. But like, no, dude, like having that experience, and especially like when I did, because like, at the time, it was like, at the time, like a lot of people, and, had never heard of ayahuasca, and, like you had to really
Mhm.
like know people to be able to get invited into these circles, and you still do, to be
What
like
year was this?
in this is in 2012.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah.
and like you really, like it was it was like a really special thing. I mean, they like to get into the, like invited into this dieta, like I had to be interviewed, like, I mean, I had to like get like grilled, interrogated, you know, um, to be approved to do it and stuff like that. So, this like, yeah, I mean, and no, of course, like, I would never trade that in. Like, that was the craziest thing that I mean, like any person, that like comes from this society, to like just to be down there and to see like, what like the heart of the Amazon jungle even is, and then to like have those experiences on top of it. I mean, it was totally insane. And I'll just, I'll kind of wrap up with this, but like what we did on the tail end, there were five of it. The rest of the group, went back to the States. And then there were like five of us who traveled on, back to Lima, and then, up to Cuzco and to Machu Picchu. And we met up with, this guy who is like, again, like a deep lineage Incan shaman, from, that's
Mhm.
that's the Incan, in the Andes, the Incan culture. And he's like a San Pedro, like Wachuma shaman, so like the San Pedro cactus that's mescaline bearing. And he took us up on Machu Picchu, right? And we like walked around, and I'm telling you, like all of the tour guides on Machu Picchu are like people that are like state licensed, like the government approved. They work for the government. And dude, they saw this guy, and everybody was like genuflecting and bowing. Oh, Don Cucho, Don, like, I mean, he is the man, you know. Like all the people that like ran the show at Machu Picchu are like, it's like an honor to have you here today. Like go wherever you want to go. Yeah. You have like, well, yeah, because like the shamans are Don, like Don being like a sir, right? Like that would be it'd be kind of like and they Don Cucho and it was like you could go and instead of being like the regular tour groups could only go to like these places and this, it was like we could go wherever we wanted. And then he like we walked around, he showed us like all the places on Machu Picchu and like gave us the stories that passed down to him like through his ancestors. And then we like found a flat part like next to the ruins in the middle of the afternoon, and we all like formed a circle and he starts drumming and like pouring up the wachuma, and we sit there and we're like drinking San Pedro on the side of Machu Picchu, and like
that's awesome.
And that was unbelievable. Like that was like that's like nobody gets to do that. Like that was such a crazy thing. But before like we started drinking, he's just like stops drumming and looks up and he's like, and there's a giant condor, the biggest like airborne creature on Earth, right? And there's only like I don't know a few hundred of them in existence, and it's just like circling right over our circle. And he starts going condor, condor, and like drumming and like chanting for the condor. And then all of a sudden he stops, and there's another one. So there's two giant condors circling over us, and he's just like condor, and all of a sudden he stops. And a third one, like out of the whole global population of giant condors, that's like a significant percentage of what was just like circling over our little group. And I mean, it was unbelievable. And, we went in and, like the San Pedro, the San Pedro peyote, like that's a whole other, different kind of, experience. But that was a pretty potent thing to like end that coming out of the jungle and like going up to the mountains and doing that too. So that's like that's what we did. I would never like trade that experience in for anything. It was it was really something, man.
That's awesome.
Cool. Good for you, man. That's wild. We'll have to talk next time we get together. We'll have to talk more about that. That's cool.
Sorry, dude. Adam baited me with these questions. Like,
no, man, it's all good.
Of course, I'm gonna like.
We were already off the rails, so it's better that we leaned into it, and now I'll just change the title to talking about space and drugs. And,
but they're not like mutually exclusive. That's for
no, man. Sure. It's all good. It's all good.
People that do DMT see shit land on top of the pyramids in South America and all kinds of shit.
One of the one of the books that I brought down with me that I was reading while I was there is called like Inner Journeys to Outer Space. And it's a book of essays, about like, psychedelic experience and stuff like that. But like, largely, that like that is almost a, in high dose, psychedelic experiences, like that's, nearly like a universal thing is like, you're taking an inner journey and like having some kind of like cosmic, interdimensional, extraterrestrial contact or experience.
Cool, man. That's interesting. That's I'd love to hear more about that trip and like just your experiences on that kind of level with the I have a lot of questions myself personally about the ayahuasca and all that, but I'll just save it because we can keep going. I had two things before. If you guys have anything else you want to say, go for it. But I had two specific things I just wanted to throw out there. Back to the space talk real quick that I thought were interesting. Just there's so many things that I've learned through my research on this side of the coin. This one I found interesting. This is from a splashdown. It's a photo from a splashdown from Gemini 6A. Apparently it had, I think it rendezvoused or something with Gemini 7 or something like that. But anyways, As you can see, can you guys see that big antenna coming out of the
Mhm.
capsule?
Mhm.
Obviously,
It almost looks like an oil painting.
the big rod. Yeah, I think it's because I could be wrong, but I don't know if they had. It might be because they colorized it. It might be a black and white photo, and they colorized it. I could be wrong though.
Oh yeah.
But anyways, so there's this large, long fiberglass looking antenna. It's a whip antenna apparently. So I read that these things are supposed to come like it looks white in the photo, but I mean it's supposed to be silver. So they apparently come from the factory, polished silver, and they char at temperatures over 5,000 degrees. So obviously you're going to hit over that if you're falling from space. You're splashing down from space. So it's interesting. A lot of people say that while this didn't come from space, it was just dropped out of a plane, that's not something that we've really talked about dropping capsules and stuff from planes, which is interesting. And then another thing I just want to talk about. You brought up the two things. You brought up the tire tracks, and you brought up dust and the sand kicking around. Well, if you watch videos of the rovers when they're spinning their wheels and it's kicking out dust, it looks like it's on Earth. Like it's not reacting to like a zero gravity or anything like that. It's literally like as if you're on Earth on a quad shooting dirt out of your tires. Furthermore, it's interesting how the tire tracks are left at all, or the footprints for that matter, because you need, essentially to make clear, distinct prints like that, you need moisture. You need moisture.
Mhm.
And there's no moisture there. That's what we're told, anyways. So maybe that's just something that's related to a different lie we're being told. Yeah, or not. But I find that very interesting. And just I guess another quick thing when we were talking about moon rocks, Bill Casing brings it up, and it's if they did have to fake it, I mean the moon rocks, they could fake the moon rocks because they would have the best minds at work to determine what a moon rock would most likely consist of, and they have the technology to to manufacture these rocks to to whatever form that they want, right?
Well,
Yeah.
not necessarily because
Okay.
they're carbon dated. But there are moon rocks that are on Earth naturally. Just from shit that's hit the moon, and then like a rock will come down. Like there are moon rocks that are here. I don't know that they could make them necessarily, but yeah, they could have got their hands on them in other ways. Sure.
Or they
How do we
could
know they're moon rocks?
claim anything to be a moon rock, in as much as
That's what
like
I'm
one of the prevalent theories of like how the moon formed was that like Earth was hit by like a like a
Carbon
mass
dating
while it was
snake.
right the while the Earth was forming, that a an object hit the Earth, and like while it was still like kind of plastic, like molten, that a glob of it came off, and that's like what the actual moon is, so that the moon is actually composed of the same like material that the Earth is.
Mm-hmm.
So you plausibly you could say, oh yeah, this rock is a moon rock and it has the same composition as an Earth rock,
Mm-hmm.
if the moon is made of what the Earth is made of.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, one thing we didn't get into is like all the weird coincidences around the moon. The fact that it's not hollow, but it's less dense than the Earth, and it's really close to the Earth, and it's in the exact right spot to make eclipses. It's whatever, 400 times smaller than the sun, but 400 times closer. So it's like exactly
Okay.
perfect to
Yeah, yeah.
keyhole those eclipses. And eclipses and stuff were, if you look at all of these ancient sites, they were
Oh, yeah.
all super interested in the summer solstice, the winter solstice, and eclipses and predicting eclipses. And it's like, I mean, how many
Across the world.
eclipses? Yes. How many eclipses have you natively or your grandparents seen in their life? Like for the Mayans to predict eclipses hundreds of years out into the future, it's like you maybe would only see one eclipse every it could be every 100 years. I mean, they're not in the same spot. They're very narrow when they come through Earth. And it's like to be able to know what that is and predict it is very, very interesting. And if you look at like, okay, let's say there was contact with aliens back then. It's like if aliens would just be like, hey, this day in 10 years, the sun's gonna fucking blot out. People be like, no way. And then like, oh yeah, look, we'll predict it for you here. There's gonna be one here and here and here. And if they had just predicted that, these ancient humans would have thought they were gods. And there's stories of eclipses happening in really crazy, like there's one eclipse that happened in this like famous Roman battle where it actually stopped the battle because like the sun got blotted out and everyone's freaked out. I mean,
That's crazy.
so yeah, there are some, like the moon is very interesting, and it's had some really profound effects on the upbringing of humanity.
The eclipse thing is huge. It's huge, and like you said, just the fact that like the moon is the exact size and the exact like location, and the Earth being positioned, in relation to the sun, to create this event, this alignment, and that it happens on these like trajectories. I mean, there is a total eclipse of the sun somewhere on Earth every 9 months, right? But like in almost every single, instance, it's over the ocean
Yeah.
because like the Earth is primarily covered in water, and so for it to like happen in any given place on land, and for any of these ancient civilizations to understand it, not just to
Yes.
understand it, it's so crazy. But the way that they would use it, and like you talk about the Mayans, like their priest class, like their whole religion was kind of like based on these calendars, and using them to navigate these periods in between eclipses. And then like once the eclipse came, like the whole idea was they would commit these like mass human sacrifices and say like, because the priest class like knew that the eclipse was coming, and they knew that the sun was going to come back because they had been initiated to understand it. But the lay people were like, oh my god, the gods have taken away the sun. And the priests are like, if we spill enough blood, if we kill enough people, we can bring the sun back. Like we will appease the god, and and they will like end this darkness that would end our civilization. If the sun is not out, human life ends. We have to appease the gods with enough blood to bring the sun back, right? And that was their religion. And so like these eclipses like were all of it. And how do you figure that out? I mean, and I don't know if you guys have ever seen like the total eclipse. Like if you're like 100% in the path of totality, it is the most insane thing I have ever seen in my life. I saw it in 2017 here in Oregon, and like, dude, at a certain point, when you're in the full totality, you can take the viewing glasses off and look directly into the sun, and it is insane, dude.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
That's cool.
I'll bet. And those tourist spots along the path of totality fill up like I think like a decade in advance because like people know they're coming. But it's so crazy that these ancient civilizations were able to because like you said, most of the time they happen and you don't notice them, or like for one spot to get an eclipse and then to get an eclipse again, and then to be able to, for these ancient humans to say, what was that? How did it happen? To be able to chart the path of the sun and the moon and the earth, and like that's really really odd that these people that barely are out of the Stone Age are able to figure this out. Yeah.
It's insane, dude. Like it is insane. Because you're talking about charting. I mean, really like thousands of years, like of being able to like predict these patterns.
Yeah. And again, it happens once and then it might not happen again for 50 years or 75 years. And it's like, how do you it's just star math.
And even when it does happen, like the path of totality, like the band of where you actually can be on Earth and witness it's like north to south, a band of 40 miles.
Yep.
I mean, you have to be in the middle of that 40-mile, otherwise you don't really see it. Then you're just like looking at the sun and the sun looks weird.
Well, I think we'll wrap.
That's
it
why
up
you
there.
need those viewing glasses.
Or you could just be like Trump and squint at it. You remember that? That was a big, all the safety shit coming out. Don't look directly at it, blah, blah. And then you have Trump out on the White House lawn. Just doing this
yeah.
Safety squints. You ever work construction?
Crazy.
Safety squints.
Crazy. This was a lot of fun, guys.
I agree.
I'd love to. We'll obviously do this again, but I'd like to get you on with when we have Bart back. So let's try to make that happen. Otherwise, regardless, we will see you back here very soon. And obviously, we have some interesting topics that we want to talk about. So maybe next time, whether we'll pick a topic or maybe we won't. We'll just shoot the shit for a bit and see where it goes. But yeah, man, this was a lot of fun. Thanks for being here, Adam. Before you go, if you have any final words, but just for those who are newer to the show, just let them know where they can find you.
Yeah, it's just youtube.com/@thetruthdesk. Most of my socials are either The Truth Desk or just Truth Desk. I've got a new segment on called The Truth Desk where I'm just talking about various things. I just did one on AI and the dystopian future, and I'm going to start doing like current events kind of stuff. I got a list of things to do on that as well. So, and I can even share some of that stuff with you, Jordan, if you guys wanted to come on and do current events kind of stuff with me.
I'd love that.
Because I've got a whole list here. I've got
like that ourselves. So
man, I've got stuff. I've got the alpha gal tick, to alpha gal disease and ticks. The CIA agent that was caught with all this gold in his basement. All kinds of stuff I've been looking into. So
okay,
and then they say
that.
and then the agency's like, oh, he lied about his background. He wasn't in the Navy. He wasn't it's like. The CIA
wait a minute, this guy is,
and that's an exhaustive background check. They talk to everyone you've been associated. It takes years to go through that. But anyway, so that's what's new on my channel. And Habsburg, cool. Jordan, I'd love to get you guys in on that. If you want to, we could do some episodes of that together where we just talk news and current events.
I'd love that.
Yeah, dude.
We can swap cast that stuff and that'd work great because we were literally talking about doing that ourselves. So let's do it, man. That's cool. Thanks again for being here, though. And we'll have you back as soon as we can. And man, we always enjoy ourselves with having you here. So
we always get far afield from.
That's good. I just really like this episode. I feel we got a lot of comments of people really enjoying the content.
Shout out to the people in the chat because they had some funny comments and some useful comments and so
I did see when I was scrolling through a little bit, some people were big mad, also in the comments.
What are you gonna do?
I'll have to look later. I don't I just look at the ones Jordan throws up. So.
I had to click off because I was a little distracted, but they were like, the two guys with the beards are fucking idiots.
Yeah, I know. Did you see that one? I was almost gonna pull that one up. I was almost gonna pull that one up.
Some people.
No, man, he was he was calling us like Bo. What did he say? I think like go hunt a boar. He said you guys should go hunt a boar or something. I don't know
The
what
guys
that
with the
was.
beards are fucking morons.
Yeah,
Do
but
you guys?
and he-
Is that people from my channel? Do you see the comments of when I
I
like
I
go
think
live?
we might see them all. Yeah.
Really?
So he first he said the first thing he said was the two guys with the beards should shave for professional reasons. For professional reasons, and I was just like, okay. And then later he's like, the two guys with the beards are fucking idiots. Go hunt a boar. Like, all right, buddy. Like,
Wow. Maybe
I
that's a
think- I think
psyop. Maybe that's an anti-beard psyop.
Yeah. They're like, oh, equating having a beard with being.
he works
like,
for NASA or something. I don't know.
Oh, exactly. Like, yeah, you're some like flat Earth, freaking anti-moon beardo weirdo, like.
Bro,
Yeah.
go hunt a boar. So like there's boar hunting in like Oklahoma, Texas,
Yeah.
We could get together and go on a wild
do that.
boar hunting expedition.
Dude, I would be
Go
down with
viral.
that. Hawaii, dude. Let's go out and like hunt some boars on Hawaii. Big out there.
Ooh, that would
Yeah.
be cool. Hawaii hunting trip.
I've got a friend that could guide us on a boar hunting trip out there.
Dog.
Mark Zuckerberg has a whole bunch of land and he hunts boars. He was talking, I think he was
Oh, yeah,
on
I know Mark.
Rogan. Mark. He was talking about hunting boars with like his bow or something.
Yeah, the fucking guy didn't even know what kind of bow he
Didn't
had.
know what kind of that was.
Fucking
Dude,
moron.
I've seen his place on North Shore of
Oh,
Kauai.
yeah?
You've been
I've-
out to Zuckerberg's?
Yep. I mean, I didn't
Yep.
get like let onto the property, but yeah. So like
Love it.
you can see where it is, and they have this like giant stone wall that like spans the whole like the road line, on his property, and you can like look over, and they've got like guard towers, and I mean it's crazy,
Oh, wow,
dude, and it
yeah.
is so big, and everybody in Kauai hates him so much, dude.
Well, like he's
They
like,
hate
the
him
John
so
McAfee
much,
of
dude.
Hawaii.
They hate
yeah,
him
like
so
he's
much.
like one of those guys. Like I don't know if you guys have played the newer like the Hitman games, like the newer Hitman game. Like the targets are like tech people or big influencer. Like he's totally someone that would be a target on Hitman. So yeah, I could.
Oh, he's
totally
got huge
see that.
security out there, dude.
Yeah.
Like he knows.
Yeah, he's did you see he entered a jujitsu tournament? This is old news. It was like
Oh,
a year
yeah.
ago, but he entered a jujitsu tournament, and this is like after his he was this weird alien looking guy, and then like I think don't quote me on this. I think he did ayahuasca or something, and like he
Oh, I'm sure
totally
they're all
like his
different.
hair's different, his tan's different, or he was replaced.
No, dude, and then remember like last summer he came out. It was last summer or the summer before, and he had like the curly hair and wearing like the gold chains, kind of like looking like a
Yeah.
wigger, and like it was all-
Yeah.
Big time wigger, yeah, dude.
and then what? And he
Skeet,
was
skeet, bang bang.
Yeah. That is
bang,
like
bang.
that big
Vanilla
guy.
We just like pimps, no hoes.
but
Glad
then
you got that
remember,
reference.
remember he was supposed to fight Elon Musk at the Roman Colosseum.
Yeah,
Mhm. That would have
Right?
been awesome.
yeah,
That would
would
have been really good.
Yeah, that was-
Elon Musk thinks he could have taken him. I don't like. I mean, if Mark Zuckerberg has, and I think he does have legit jujitsu training, like
Yeah.
Musk's not. Musk's like, well, I weigh more than him. It's like,
yeah,
but
I
you're
know.
fat
He's
and
like, I
belly
could just
and
lay on
pudgy.
him. I could just lay on him.
Yeah.
And it's like,
It's
well,
like,
no.
I think
That's
you get your
like-
dome rocked.
That's like probably the only time Joe Rogan pushed back on Musk was when, like, because that's probably when he wants to push back the most. When Musk is blabbing on about fighting and stuff, he doesn't know what the fuck he's talking about. Because Joe
Yeah.
actually like knows what he's talking about.
Yes, that's
Um,
his one
So he
area
probably
of true
bites
expertise.
literally bites his tongue off trying. But yeah, at that point he was like, well, I don't know about that. He didn't push very hard, but yeah, he definitely tried pushing back. So yeah, man. Anyways, we're I feel like we're starting a whole new episode now.
Yeah,
So,
huge. By the way, huge shout out to the audience. They've been great this whole episode.
yeah, man, they've
Awesome
been here like
comment.
a lot of these people have been here the
Yes.
whole time too. So yeah, shout out to those guys. That's awesome.
They really like seeing all of us, man. We'll have to
Yeah.
do that current events thing, and just do like a news segment or something.
It's
'Cause that's
fun, dude. This it's a good like dynamic with the three of us. All like it's just like it's an easy chat, and it's it's fun. It's always fun. So
It is.
Agreed,
I
man.
agree.
All right, well, let's set it up soon, and enjoy the rest of your evening. Adam, we'll be in touch soon, brother.
All right, take care, guys.
Okay, peace, buddy. All right, guys, that was a long one. That was a good one. I don't know. That's getting pretty close to maybe our longest episode. That was fun, man. That was a lot of fun, as usual with Adam. Adam's a fucking good guy. He's funny and he's smart, and I enjoy speaking with him.
and a lot of times he'll take like the opposite stance of where you or I is coming from,
good.
and like
Yeah.
I think that is good.
Yeah, I agree. So shout out to Adam. Definitely go check out the Truth Desk. We'll definitely have him back soon. We'll keep it short. Definitely go check out Scott Horton Academy. Make sure to please subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, if you want to enter in for the iPad, just screenshot your proof that you're subscribed, email it to divulgencemail@gmail.com. Once we hit 1,000, we'll be pulling a name. And anything else, Habsburg, before we wrap her up?
No, I mean, thanks everybody that, I mean, it did look like people were pretty engaged and like had a good time with that. So like, thank you for everybody who like watched and, participated.
Yeah. Cool. All right, guys, all the best. Take care. And,